and kind of, spotlighting her kind of for the first time in a big public way.
Yeah.
So we thought it was a good alternative to the traditional format of the State of Higher Education address, which is great, but we knew we probably shouldn't have that in the same format.
No, and you will have, I won't say millions, but you'll have hundreds of thousands of people watching it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I love the way it pulls all three of those leaders together. Did Teresa say that governor's kicking off, or?
Yeah, it's a pre-recorded, but
okay.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And really, frankly, the whole thing is recorded. So
oh, good.
It's not a live. Spoilers.
Well, no, that's fine, because I was thinking, boy, she's got a busy day to have these meetings all day and then go fresh into that tonight.
Well, it's been a whirlwind because they just sat down to do that recording, the three of them together in the studio at WFYI 3 weeks ago. Like it's been a fast spin around from WFYI just kind of their team is leading that. Yeah, they completely handled the editing and all of it. They just kind of helped us out with that in good faith. So that was great to have their support and their help. There's our chair.
I hope this becomes an annual on WFYI.
Mm-hmm. Well, they have historically come and helped us broadcast it, the live event, but I would argue it's hard to get a solid recording from that. Obviously what happens live is great, and you've met Teresa once, it's fantastic in that setting, but this will be different, and I think it may set a new precedent for us too. It'll be exciting to watch. Hi, Bev.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
Good to see everybody. Doing fine.
Good. You're still in sunny Arizona, yes?
I'm still in sunny Arizona, and we'll be here for just about another 4 weeks and then back home.
Okay.
But that time it'll be nice and sunny. I think it's warmer there than it is here today.
Have you been able to get your vaccination from Arizona?
Yes, easily. We were first. There's a big complex here. It's a Tucson Medical Center. It's kind of the IU system of Tucson area. And they just set it up perfectly for easy access to get appointments. And so we've had them now. I'm past 4 weeks with my second one. So we went out last week.
Good for you. Well, Florida was not allowing the snowbirders to get their shots there. And I can understand at one level, and yet what do you do if you're a snowbirder?
Right. Well,
you're not going to come back.
Yeah. We own a house here. So that made a difference, I think. Sure. Although I never heard anybody that couldn't get a shot if they were of the right age. So, yeah.
Right.
Unfortunately, I fell into one of the first categories.
Hey, I fell in early enough. I just went over that 60 hump this year, and I couldn't have been more happy to be 60 this year. I have my first. I don't have my second one yet. I'll get that in another week or so. It feels like the world's lifted off your shoulders once you have the vaccination.
We went to our favorite restaurant. Hadn't been there for a year, practically exactly a year, and it was just like it always was. And they were happy to have people back. They're not full, obviously, but the dining was just good to be out and have somebody serve you a glass of wine instead of pouring it out of your
Well, and it's hugging grandkids. Our kids don't live with us, so we have been so careful, and I know I'm within a few weeks of getting to do that, so I'm very excited.
Yes, I'm excited for you too. Ours are in Indiana, so we'll see them in a couple more weeks, but it's been a long time. Lots of Zoom. That helped.
It's funny, even when the grandkids know how to run Zoom as well as I do. It's so cute. This is nothing new to them.
No, it's just the way they operate. So, yeah. We're the cliche. Hi, Judd. Yep. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Loading up.
It's not the same looking at initials as it would be looking at you all around a table.
I like seeing faces.
Uh-huh.
Put my glasses on.
Won't be long. Won't be
It's
long.
coming.
Be able to all be back together again.
We will.
Right. I think Bev, I popped in your chair's notes if you haven't seen it, that we're going to try to have May be an in-person meeting.
Yes.
Here in the
Yeah. I
in
got
the
it.
commission's office. So, and that's a shorter meeting anyway. So
Right.
it'll follow the kind of 1 in the afternoon start format like we've been having, but we are moving forward as if that will be an in-person. So.
And it doesn't usually have as big an audience maybe as some of the others where we have more.
That's right.
Whatever. So
Yeah.
That's probably a good time to start. Give it a try.
I'm gonna have to put my event planner hat on over the next couple of months to figure out how to do this in person and yet be friendly for those that still want the virtual option. We're gonna have to get creative with how we do that. So
yeah. And I'm sure we can figure out a way, even if it's just a computer sitting up there, where like this, that could show everybody's face. You are very creative. You always manage to find good ways to do things. So I'm sure you'll have this under control.
You, Bev. Thank you.
It's true. It's true.
Very kind. We'll get it worked out.
Bev, I've invited our chancellor of the Hamilton County campus, our new chancellor of the brand new campus, Stacey Atkinson. I'll introduce her, Dr. Atkinson, who was previous chancellor from Richmond, but much more. You'll love getting to meet her. Thought I'd bring her.
Actually, I'm glad you told me that. I will introduce you and then let you introduce her.
Yes, that's perfect. That's perfect. I'll do that. And then just a couple other minutes of comments.
I had her name, but I didn't. I will just let you take care of that for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. No problem. Yes, I know that's really something brand new and been talked about for years and years and years.
It was time.
Yeah.
It was time. And with with our chancellor retiring from Indy, it was the right time to restructure Indianapolis, which had gotten so big, and truly meet the needs of Hamilton County. So it's an exciting time.
Yes, I'm very anxious to hear about it because I know it's been in various stages for a long time. So, and good for Stacey.
Yeah. Oh, we've got the right person.
Good.
I would call her an ex-Marine, but you're never an ex-Marine. You're always a Marine, right, Stacey? She's probably on mute right now.
I think I've met Stacey before. Have I met you, Stacey?
I think so. I've been at the CHE meetings to talk about 8-week courses when we launched that 2 years ago. So I remember meeting many of you, and it is really sad to see everyone on a video right now.
Yeah, so familiar, and I thought somewhere I've come across her. So
that's it.
Glad you're with it.
Thank you.
Liz, you give us the go ahead when you think it's time. I don't have to talk.
Yeah, I think I'll give it just a couple more minutes here, but otherwise, yeah, we'll get started real soon. Most people are joining up. Yeah.
Get on. So.
That's just unbelievable.
How did you think the podcast went yesterday, Sue?
Teresa, you are fabulous. That is a great, and the podcasts are fabulous. So I thought it went real well, and I'm glad for, I popped ahead of people on a couple of things. I'm sorry about that. But I love the way the ICIs are coming alongside too. It was it's all good.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think it's a really good. Is that primarily the faculty and staff that listen to the podcast, or do you try to share it with students, or how do you use it?
It's available for everyone, faculty and staff. First and foremost, it's called Our College, Your Voices. But you'll be surprised when we interview chancellor candidates. I've noticed quite a number of them will have listened to some of our podcasts because you can pick the topic that you're interested in, and so they might want to know, what are we doing on diversity, equity, and belonging, or they might want to know what we're doing on transfer or dual credit or whatever. So it's been very helpful in all kinds of ways, and we're happy to have it out. I think Stacey might correct me, but I know we're over 150 episodes.
Wow.
It's incredible. Yeah, and we cover all kinds of topics. So.
Liz, I think probably time, don't you think?
I'm looking through our current participants. We still got a couple members that haven't joined yet, but in respecting time, we've got at least 7 or 8 of us here, so I think we could.
We have a forum. That's a good way to start.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody to the March Commission meeting. We're very happy to see all of you with us. We will begin as usual with our Secretary, Judd Fisher, calling the roll.
Thank you, Bev. Mike Alley.
Present.
Dennis Bland. Dennis. Ann Bowen.
Present.
John Costas.
Present.
Trent Engbers.
Present.
Judd, I'm here. Alan Hubbard. Chris Lamoth. Pepper Moharan.
Present.
Chris Murphy.
Here.
Dan Peterson.
I'm here, Judd.
Bev Pitts.
I'm here.
John Pop. Well, Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Judge. Glad to get us started. As we usually begin these meetings, soon maybe not to, but right now still are, we are virtual and thus are not able to visit the campuses as we have done so many times. And we're sorry that we miss again visiting our good friends at Ivy Tech. But President Sue Ellspermann is here to talk a little bit about what's going on there and to introduce one of their new chancellors.
Thank you so much, Bev, and to all the commissioners, thank you for all you've done during these tough COVID, the year behind us, and hopefully not too much of a time in front of us. I'd like to take advantage of today to introduce our newest chancellor of our newest campus. Some of you know that Ivy Tech stood up or is in the process of standing up Hamilton County, the Noblesville site, as a full campus. Hamilton County is the fastest growing county in the state and 4th largest. It was time. That facility allowed us the ability, and we did a restructure of Indianapolis because our Indianapolis campus was just getting too big and too unwieldy. All for all good reasons. And as a result, we have selected the chancellor. She is Dr. Stacey Atkinson. She's with us today, and I'd love for her to say just a few words. She's only in her 2nd week, formally in her new role, but July 1, it's all hers when it goes full-fledged. So, Stacey, do you want to say a few words?
And I'll be quick. Thank you all for having us today. I would love nothing else than to host you upstairs on the 2nd floor. We would have loved that so very much, but we are thankful that people are staying safe still in this day, and during these rather very unprecedented times that have truly gone on longer than we all expected. So I'll start there. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. We'll get to the other side of this all. I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited for the new role. Ivy Tech has been instrumental to me. I've sort of grown up at Ivy Tech. I've been at the college for 6 going on 7 years, have held a couple different roles. This one is super exciting. This one speaks to my skill set of a new build. As I look around, there are 15 full-time employees right here on the Noblesville site right now. There will be close to 100 by the time we're done, and we will start July the 1st. And done will be temporary. Done is a temporary word. As we continue to expand and continue to grow, we will likely continue to move forward with more campuses, more program, and hopefully a tremendous amount of students. Can't wait to walk through the halls and hear the buzz of the students. Some of you will recognize my face. I served as a statewide co-chair for 8-week courses. So 2 years ago, I stood in front of you and told you all the wonderful things we were doing in the name of student success. And one of those things was reformatting our courses from being predominantly 16 weeks to predominantly 8 weeks. While I do have some scar wounds and some war wounds, I'll tell you that we successfully did it, and we did it for the right reasons, and I'm proud to say that. It has allowed us to do many things, especially during a global pandemic where none of us expected that we would be needing a second start twice a year, and we have that now, so that's super exciting. I am on day 9. There are many things I'd love to tell you about. I won't waste your time. Please call me, please email me. I'm happy to tell you all the wonderful things happening here. Right now, we're trying to hire. We need to build a team. One of the exciting opportunities here at Hamilton County is that we get a chancellor and we get a leadership team and we get to sift out all of the work that is ahead of us and before us. So we are super excited. We're in interviews back to back, second rounds. Our first candidate went to second round yesterday, which is amazing news. And we will soon just continue to grow. We have a phase 1 of programs that we have released. I've met with mayors and community members, and we're just learning needs and what can we offer to you and how can we be a steward and actually help students and help Hoosiers get into the workforce, which is such a great need. So I'm happy to take any questions. I'm so thankful for Ivy Tech, and really this was the right thing to do, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
All right. Thank you, Stacey. She's got a big carry, a big lift in front of her. Thank goodness for your Marine training. It will come in handy here as you try to bring this up to speed as fast as we can. So with that, let me just make a few other comments about the college where we are. You know that community colleges have been the most impacted by COVID of any student group. Nationwide, enrollments are down about 10%. We are in the 7 to 8% range, 7% last fall. We're with second 8 weeks, we're still picking up new students. So we will continue and probably be in that 7-ish range. It's, you know, why? You say, our students are the ones that are most impacted. They are mostly working adults. They are many working parents as well, and they are just trying to cope. Many of them are low income, many students of color. Just a statistic that I think you might find interesting, 42% of all of Indiana's students of color are attending Ivy Tech. 52% of Indiana's African-American college students are attending Ivy Tech. So we know how important it is that we are fully inclusive and the place where every student, whether you're 18 years old or you're a working adult, well into a first career, we're the place for you. So wanted to just share that. We've adapted, very pleased with that. And just a couple things that I will mention to you that we've done, are doing. Very appreciative of the partnership with the Commission and Department of Workforce Development and Governor's Workforce Cabinet on taking Hoosiers to the next level. 2,700 Hoosiers who were unemployed or greatly impacted by COVID are in school now, completing a short-term certificate, which is in high wage, high demand, will allow them to continue their careers or launch a new career at higher wage levels as they complete. That's going well. We hope to do up to another 1,000 in this second 8 weeks of spring and continue to develop. The learnings are how important, as we've been standing up our career coaching and employer connections. We've learned how important it is to bring that career coach alongside these unemployed and underemployed Hoosiers as they're trying to figure out their next step. So we've got lots of learnings. It's working, we're growing, but our goal is to be agile to the economy. The last thing, I think you've probably heard it when we spoke to you a couple of months ago about our Cengage Unlimited, that we took $5 million of our Institutional CARES Act dollars to make those digital book resources available for free to our students. We did that this year. Our students have saved, 40% of our students are saving in that way, and an average of $150 in savings per semester. We're very pleased about that. We have made the commitment when CARES dollars were able to be spent out on the longer term. We are in the process of committing to a second year of that as well, because that's so much in the benefit of our students. And by the way, over 2% improvement in pass rates because our students have their books, right? We've always said, statistics told us about 25% of students in community colleges don't get their books, and we can see that in their results. So I'm just very appreciative of the great support that you all have given us, continue to give the state of Indiana. One last plug for our chancellor on the line. July 30th will be the grand opening for the Hamilton County campus. Want you to know that. And just know that we're always here to do whatever we can to support the state, to support our four-year partners, to ensure that our students are transferring either to a four-year institution or into the workforce in a successful manner, and that's aligned to Indiana's growing economy. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Bev, and unless there's any questions for either Stacey or me.
Thank you, Sue. I think we are looking forward to seeing that Hamilton County building in place, and hopefully in the near future we'll be able to do that. Also, thanks to new Chancellor Atkinson. Stacey, very happy to have you in the ranks, and wish you well as you open. So thanks so much for being with us as always.
Where is the new campus, Stacey? What's your location?
So the former Noblesville site, it's the same building. It's the same large building. Behind us is the Boys and Girls Club. So if you think off of Main Street, the Boys and Girls Club, we share a parking lot with them. We are a little bit more east than them, but here we are. Hope to see you. We'd be happy to give you a tour, happy to show you around when you're all ready.
We've been in that site for, gosh, I should know how many years. It's before
Since
my
2014.
time. Yeah.
2014.
So, and we had not used all the space. So we've got 5 or more years to fill that up with all of the programs that it needs. But it's a great space, great facility.
I might come see you.
Please do. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question.
I said, love your enthusiasm. Good luck.
I'm guilty as charged with enthusiasm. Thank you.
Yes, to tour it, and it is great space. So you'll do wonders to it, I know. So,
anytime.
Well, congratulations too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, as we move on, I want to remind everyone of 2 upcoming commission events. The first one is this evening. The State of Education in the Workforce will be tonight. It will air tonight at 7:30 on WFYI. So be sure to tune in. And I'm hoping that those of us that can't get WFYI will have it until we get back to Indiana. We'll have a chance to maybe see that at some point or hear it. Also, the Weldon Conference, the H. Kent Weldon Conference for Higher Education, will be held virtually on Friday, April the 9th. The conference will focus on how higher education is a force for innovation and economic transformation, particularly with recent economic challenges. Please visit the Commission website to register, and I already have, and I hope a lot of you will be able to do that too. And last month, Dr. Trent, our wonderful member, hosted a faculty leadership conference focused on adult learning. There were 2 great keynote sessions and breakouts. I think we've got a bit of an interruption. Somebody have a mic open, maybe. Okay, we'll try again. There were 2 great keynote sessions and breakout on various topics. And I'd like to turn to Trent to give us a summary of that event. So Trent?
Yes, thanks, Bev. So yes, the conference was held February 19th with the theme of elevating adult students. And certainly while we missed the opportunity for networking that happens in a face-to-face format, the virtual format enabled a lot of faculty to attend who wouldn't otherwise be able to participate. And we had keynote speakers from Dr. David Clayton of Strata and Dawn Busick of Thomas P. Miller and Associates. There were also student and faculty panels and breakout sessions on a range of topics, with the goal of really exploring ideas and making suggestions for Indiana faculty, administrators, and policymakers in the areas of adult education. And in particular, the conference generated ideas around curriculum and teaching, student support, and policy and administrative interventions. As I think about the conference and what I had a chance to see that day, there were a number of things that stood out to me. You know, the first one is the value of comprehensive transcripts and the way that students are able to talk about what goes on during their college experience to potential employers. And that's certainly an area that Indiana has been a leader in. And so I felt really good about the fruit that's going to be coming from that. The second is that a number of the speakers talked about the emotional dynamics of adult students. And so while I think as an educator, I tend to focus on some of the more formal barriers, you know, childcare, work schedules, appropriate pedagogy. A number of the speakers talked about just the psychological and emotional dynamics of returning to school. And I think that's something that's worth us considering. And then, you know, in honor of the fact that we're being hosted today by Ivy Tech and Dr. Elsperman referenced their partnership with Cengage, I'll tell you a theme that came up again and again and again was this idea of open educational resources and how we can use those to make college more affordable for all students, but especially for adult college students. So, and if anyone has any questions about the conference, I'd be happy to address those.
Thanks so much, Trent, and thank you for your leadership. That's just really terrific. As you know, Trent's term runs out this summer, so we will be looking for a new faculty person to never to replace him, but to come on in the same position. The application for the faculty
improve upon him. How about we always say that?
Never, Trent, never. Yeah, but I'm sure there are wonderful people out there who will be excellent members for us. The application for the faculty position is now available on the Commission's website. Indiana faculty interested in serving on the Commission can submit their application materials by April 16th. So if you know anybody, that's a good date to let them know to be considered. And at this point, I will turn it over to Commissioner Levers for her report.
Thank you, Chair Pitts. I appreciate the call out for tonight's event. We will make sure, Charlie, if you will make sure that we send the link for tonight's presentation so that those of you who aren't able to access a public television station can see it another way. We decided this year, instead of doing the State of Higher Education address, which you know we've done for many, many years, that this might be a good time to bring together K-12 and workforce and actually have a presentation that aligns everything from early childhood education to lifelong learning. I think the governor will speak at the beginning for a few moments and he will conclude at the end. And then we have about 25 minutes to talk about the issues we're talking about are the future of learning, the future of work, and the future of Indiana. And so I think higher education obviously sits right in the middle of these discussions, and I hope you'll have a chance to watch it. I think it will highlight much of what we've been talking about with our strategic plan throughout the last year and a half and how we're moving forward with that. This is not going to be a substitute for our State of Higher Education address in the future. I don't want to lose sight of the uniqueness of higher education, but we thought this was a moment in time when bringing those folks together made a lot of sense. With the General Assembly now in the second half, we're really doubling down on our efforts for our legislative agenda, especially our budget request. You're going to hear from Alexa a little bit later. She'll provide a comparison between the recommendations that you provided for me to provide, and then the bill is the recommendations that the governor came out with, and then basically how that budget looked when it passed the House, and now it will be considered in the Senate. We'll be presenting to the Appropriations Committee on March 18th. We're really focused on making sure in the limited amount of time that we're having, they're really limiting our time this year. We're going to make sure that we're providing specific data about the return on investment for higher education, especially for financial aid and the other ways in which we really look at paying for what we value through our outcomes-based funding formula. I want to mention something that we'll be able to share with you in more detail later. Our college readiness report is coming out within the next few weeks. I don't have all the information for that, but we will, as you know, be having our Weldon conference in April. So I wanted to give you a heads up of something that I think is concerning, and that is that we are continuing to see a drop in the college going rate. You'll recall that we were at about 65%. We dropped down to 64, to 63, to 61. We are going to, all indications are that we will drop below 60%. Now, some of this is you're going to have a higher number of people graduating from high school, but you're also seeing a higher number graduating with a waiver from high school. So I think there are all kinds of ways for us to look at this. Keep in mind that we're talking about certificates as well as 2- and 4-year degrees. So this just continues to speak to the case that we have to make on the value proposition of higher education to Hoosiers. And you know, this concern that I know you share with me that if we don't get this right, we're going to leave swaths of people behind with the new economy, and that there's no way for us to get to our 60% goal unless we actually can make that convincing case to people. And also keep in mind that the numbers that we will be providing in that report, the most recent class was 2019, so it won't even reflect the COVID impact yet. So it'll be the graduating class of 2019 because we have to follow them out to see what happens with them the first year that they are in college. I think it's going to really require us to analyze where we are seeing these gaps. Who is choosing not to actually continue with higher education, and then figure out what are our strategies to particularly target those populations. If we are able, and I know Josh is going to talk a little bit about our agenda as well, if we do pass the FAFSA requirement with the opt-out, of course, I think that's one step that could help, but it's one of many that we need to consider. We're in the process of working with state personnel and our associate commissioners to address our back to work policy. At this point, I think the expectation is that we would be bringing staff back on a staggered basis by the beginning of April. Of course, we're all watching what happens, but we were working on a staggered basis at the end of last year before the situation was near as promising as it is right now. So obviously we'll have to still take into consideration those who have underlying health conditions. But our hope is that at least on a staggered basis, we could step back into having people in the office. And as our chair indicated, we're hopeful that our May commission can be in person as well. Some of you may have seen, and I'll just mention as a side, you may have heard of the Kenzie Academy, which is it's an Indianapolis-based company that provides technology apprenticeships, and it's a coding school. It was founded in 2017, and it was just recently acquired by Southern New Hampshire University. Southern New Hampshire University has been the leading institution in many ways on distance education. And so I think it'll be interesting to see. Kenzie will now operate as a not-for-profit division of this private university. Currently, the school has students in 40 states, totaling only about 400 students. So I think you are going to see probably some growth, and I thought it was worth pointing that out to you. And finally, as I mentioned last month, because this is the 50th anniversary of the commission, I'm highlighting a story at each of our meetings to recognize that establishment in statute of the commission 50 years ago. I'm excited to share this story today of Esther Bray. And I think this is especially important since March is National Women's History Month. And Esther Bray was an original member of the commission. She came in 1971 and served until 1992. So she continued to serve she served for 21 years as a member of the commission. I looked back at some of the data, and there was a resolution that recognized her service at that point, and it said, quote, she faithfully attended commission meetings total at a conservative estimate 420 days. She served as secretary of the commission and, quote, dedicated countless hours outside of formal meetings in reviewing and editing commission meetings, always helping the staff meet agenda deadlines. When she received the resolution, she's quoted saying she appreciated the kind words that had been offered and that serving on the commission had been a wonderful experience, and she hoped she had contributed something to the state's higher education system. No doubt she did. So those of you who get weary in long service, you have 21 years that Esther Bray served. So you cannot get weary in well-doing. And with that, Chairman Pitts, I concluded my remarks.
Thank you.
Hey, Teresa, I got a little distortion when you said something is declining 64, 63. Is that high school graduates that are going to college? Was that the statistic?
Yes, John, it's the college going rate for those graduating and matriculating into higher ed.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I got a little bleep on my computer, so I missed that.
And we'll be providing much more information of that when the readiness report comes out. That was just a snippet that I was going to share with you today.
Okay.
Yeah, looking forward to that report. This year especially, lots of very important data. Okay, I believe we're now ready to move to the I better look at my agenda. The committee reports, sorry. Let's begin with budget and productivity. So Chris and Alexa, turn it to you.
I'm not sure if Chris is here, so I'll just start. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go right ahead.
We had a pretty short meeting on February 25th. We heard one capital project, which was the Ivy Tech's Muncie Fisher building rebuild. And that is on the agenda as an expedited item, which will be voted on later today. I also provided an overview of a comparison between CHE's recommendation, the governor's recommendation, and the House Ways and Means iteration of the budget, which I will provide a more detailed overview in the legislative update. So you will hear that in just a few minutes. And our next Budget and Productivity Committee meeting is April 29th. And that's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Alexa. And we are looking forward to other things you have to tell us. Any questions for Alexa? Okay, let's switch over to student success and completion. Mike and Stephanie.
Thank you very much, Bev. This is Mike, and we met on February 23rd. And as Teresa was talking about, the decisions by so many students not coming to college, we heard in great detail about that very thing. We had a report from the Education Strategy Group. Ryan Reyna, Senior Director, gave us a really comprehensive review and an update on the research that they had done. And what they indicated is that we have seen a dramatic downgrade in the reading proficiency, of students, and even further downgrade of math in terms of the impact of the COVID not having on those young students. This was particularly apparent in the earlier grades. So that's going to continue to build and really have a multi-year impact. The other really challenging thing is that this is having a disproportionately impact on the low and moderate income and minorities and non-English language speakers. So we're going to have some real challenges associated with that. What it also showed is those that are considering post-secondary education or going to college, that an overall enrollment's down about 13%, that 1/4 of the people graduating from high school are reconsidering their choices and deciding either not to go to college or pursuing other avenues. And a lot of that is based upon, is the experience going to be as good as they thought it was going to be if they go to college? Is the economic environment right for them to go to college and things like that? They also reported that the FAFSA completion rate is down dramatically. So they really reiterated exactly what Teresa was talking about, that this is going to have a significant impact for us for a number of years. We also talked about the fact that Indiana is involved in really taking some steps to do something about that. And we have received some money from the Joyce Foundation and are utilizing those to really analyze data, do some more outreach and communications, and try to encourage people to consider post-secondary education and really do something about all these things. So we had really a great meeting with a lot of very substantive topics and things like that. We also got an update on our Workforce Ready grants and next level jobs, and we're having some really great success in reaching people and communicating, getting people enrolled, and actually seeing some great successes as a result of that as well. So that's really working. So we had an outstanding meeting. Try to answer any questions. And, Stephanie, do you have anything else you'd like to share or add?
I would just add that the next meeting is April 27th.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mike and Stephanie?
Yeah, Mike, do we have a feel as to what options and choices these students are making that would normally have pursued a college education?
Well, a lot of these people are just setting out. They're just kind of setting out and taking a rest year. They were not enthralled about, the indication was they're not enthralled about going to a school where they couldn't actually be on campus. And so they're choosing to stay at home or work or do other things. But, due to the economic uncertainty associated with COVID, what they perceive as not a full experience, they're not choosing to enroll. They're just kind of laying out a year, and will defer the decision until next year. Is what we sensed.
Aren't
Of course,
the
John, I'm sorry, John Pop, I interrupted you.
well, aren't the campuses going to be back in session for the fall semester? Aren't they going to be opening up? most of our state
Yes,
institutions?
they will be. And in fact, some are already have moved. I think Indiana has actually had more, opportunities for people than some other states have. But, so I think the other issue that I think we really need to make sure we get out there is that obviously the affordability issue concerns people as well. And I think that it, contributes, especially at the community college where people are working and have complicated lives. But we need to make sure that they understand the opportunities that we have for financial aid in Indiana. It appears that the legislature is still going to be supportive of sustaining our, financial aid and has been. So between, 21st Century Scholars, Franco Bannon, Workforce Ready Grant for tuition-free certificates, we have an offer to make to people if affordability is the issue. Now, there are a lot of other complicating issues too, like Mike said, some want the full college experience, but we just need to attack this from every angle in terms of making our case about why it's a very risky proposition to walk away from the promise of higher ed.
Yeah, I think another thing was so many, particularly for the community colleges, because their children were staying at home, they couldn't take the time to, commit to going to classes and things like that. I think that was another big part, particularly at the community college level.
Hey, Mike, just anecdotally, I'll share this semester, I felt like I had more students that made it 3 weeks into the semester and decided to take a semester off just because of the emotional and psychological fatigue of trying to balance their school with the other things that they would successfully be able to balance in another semester, but struggled because of family members working from home or having to take care of kids or just trying to balance the dynamics of the situation.
Yeah. Annie, I know you're out there. I mean, I know you've dealt with a lot of those kind of issues. You've dealt with it very well, but I know you've experienced some other students that have struggled with that. Any thoughts you might have?
Right. Well, thanks for turning that over to me, Mike. It was actually, as you were all talking about this semester, the spring one has been the most pushback from students because a lot of us are going with no break. And from a working perspective, that's very different from being a full-time employee to a student. And so many of these students are feeling that lag of, okay, we're 8 weeks in right now, and we've still got another 8 weeks to go, and there's not a day off in sight. So I think that's where a lot of the pushback has come from this semester, at least, is students are feeling that drag more than normal. I know even as a student, I've been feeling that too. So some professors have taken it kind of into their own hands, trying to figure out, okay, do I give my students a random Tuesday off? Do I, you see a lot of different variations across even Indiana, just trying to accommodate the students. But it has been a tougher semester. Even more so, I think, than the fall, because there is kind of light at the end of the tunnel, but we're still hearing that, going into the fall semester, we're going to still see most of the kind of student engagement opportunities still not available next fall even.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great. Great perspective.
Thank you, Mike. I'm gonna.
Hey, Mike.
Oh, another question? Yeah.
Sorry, this is Dan Peterson. Hi, and thanks to you and Stephanie and everyone. Just switching gears real quick, you referenced, I think, in the meeting that you had a really good update on this recent success and metrics around the workforce training grants and et cetera. I'm wondering, maybe I missed that information being shared with the rest of us, but I'd be really interested in reviewing that information at some point in time. So if somebody could send it along, I'd appreciate it.
I'll jump in to say that, Dan, that was shared at our student success meeting, and we'll get a copy of that over to all of you at the commission.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All members.
Just to give you a snapshot, we have about 42,000 who are enrolled now in the Workforce Ready Grant, and we have over 21,000 who have completed one. And but we'll provide the numbers for that and the employer training grant as well, so we can give you the most up-to-date numbers.
Thank you. That's great.
Great report, and just so much information that we need to begin to absorb and hope more coming, I know, today. So this is especially valuable, I think, given the circumstance we're in. I will switch over to academic affairs and ask.
Before you do that, could I just ask Mike, or maybe make a comment? We're talking about the impact right now on the kids who are in college and what's happening this year and next year. We've got a much bigger problem. All those kids who are possible 21st century scholars eventually, who have just been totally dislocated at lower levels and are going to be way, way, way behind. And many are just being advanced without being educated. And I was one who always argued we had to hold the K-12 responsible and just focus on higher education. But this problem is really systemic to our society and in our state. And somehow that needs to be dealt with somewhere. And I'm not sure where that is being dealt with, certainly by us or others. But it is really, really serious. It's what's happened with underrepresented people from the lower end of the economic cycle and what's happened to their education this year and the end of last.
The only thing that absolutely, I mean, what's become so clear is the disproportionate impact that COVID has had. While it's had an impact on everyone, it certainly has had a disproportionate impact on those who are low income. I will say that both the legislature and the federal government are setting aside money for learning loss or accelerated learning to try to identify where that loss is. For us, it will be especially important to transition so that we identify where the gaps are when they show up on a college campus. But throughout the whole continuum, I mean, if the loss in especially math, skills, but also literacy as well. And so we're going to have to identify and double down and, really make sure that this doesn't do what I fear it has done, which is drive those gaps even wider over the last year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's tragic.
Yes, it is a tragic situation, and it's so broad that it's almost hard to grasp all the things that we will be facing. But thank you for those comments. Very, very helpful. Ken, I will turn to you now for Academic Affairs report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. The AA&Q Committee met on February 22nd and reviewed 6 programs which are included in your agenda book for expedited action. There were 5 bachelor's programs and 1 master's programs. 3 of those programs, the Bachelor of Science programs in French, German, and Spanish, would be delivered online by Indiana University through a collaborative approach. This is totally consistent with the Commission's policy on regional campuses, which actually encourages the offering of programs on the regional campuses through collaboration. Without this collaboration, it is unlikely that some of the existing programs could be sustained or that new programs could be added. The committee had 2 discussion items which were reviewed. One of those dealt with the SARA appeals process. SARA is the state authorization reciprocity agreement. It's been a while since we've had an update on that, but that's a voluntary national network of 49 states that makes it easier for institutions to deliver distance education programs and to get state approval to do so. By the way, the commissioner is the current chair of the National Governing Board of SARA. State agencies have to approve institutions that in order to participate in SARA. And by the way, there are about 50 or so Indiana institutions that participate in SARA. There also needs to be a process in place in case an institution is denied participation so that they can appeal that decision. It seemed to make sense that AA&Q would be the place to handle those appeals. So the committee discussed that and agreed to the short appeals process that we now have in place. By the way, Indiana was the first state to join SARA, and that was back in February of 2014. The second discussion item focused on digital competencies, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Brookings GPS report that had a very specific recommendation in it, among many, that we build digital competencies into our 30 credit hour Indiana college core, the general ed core that transfers throughout the public sector. We thought that was a good recommendation, and work has begun on that process. It will probably take a number of months before we're in a position to actually add those competencies to the core. But in any case, that work has begun, and we provided an update to the committee on the initiation of that process. And that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ken. Just one more comment I want to make. I was so pleased, I think a lot of us were, with the joint degree for languages that IU and its campuses have put together. They made a really good argument for the value to workforce and workforce development to language study. And I thought that the fact that students can now be able to take languages at the bachelor's level, which perhaps they might not have had access to because those are small programs, was very creative on IU's part. So we are glad to see those joint operations going well. I think we'll turn now to the minutes. They are in your book, February 11th minutes. I will ask for a motion to approve. No one wants to approve them.
I will move they be approved. This is John.
I'll second.
Second, John Costas.
We have a second. We're having some feedback here, I guess. Okay, there we go. I think we're all right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Minutes are approved. Well, we actually are very fortunate today to have 4 excellent reports, especially given the conversation we've had thus far. This is staff at its best. They're going to update us and provide us with lots of valuable information. So we'll move right into those to give them plenty of time. Our first presentation today is from Josh and Courtney, and they're of course going to bring us an update on the legislature. And I'll turn it right over to Josh and let him introduce the program.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my slides, and my team seems to be having a little bit of trouble, so I don't know if I'm showing up picture-wise or not, but hopefully I am for you all. Can you see the slides? Because I cannot see any of you.
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And today we're going to provide a legislative update on where we sit. We're only 2 weeks into the second half of the session, and we appreciate Alexa is actually going to join Courtney and I today to talk about where the budget is at. Since it's been a month from our last update, things have not moved a whole lot just because of the fact that one of those weeks were actually the recess time. So we're only going to talk about the items that move. So this will be a little bit shorter today. So we'll start with what did the first half look like for us. Alexa will provide the budget update. We'll talk about our agenda bill, whether education bills are moving, and then, as you all are likely aware of, the new coronavirus relief package that is likely to be signed into law this week. We'll provide a quick update on some of the education funding within that bill. So just to begin, and some of this information was included in the updates that we send out. There were about 1,100 bills filed in the first half of the session, and there were 130 of them that we followed. Of those bills, 42 are still moving through. So we're still tracking 42 bills, and we anticipate a good number of those will move here actually in the next week or so. The third reading deadline in the House and the Senate is April 20th in the Senate and April 19th in the House. So we'll start seeing things get going here. And then we're scheduled to adjourn sine die on April 29th. From what I'm hearing, they're going to try their best to avoid as many conference committees as possible. So if you're aware of what that is, it's when there's a difference between the House and the Senate bill, they have to have a conference committee. So they're going to do their best to avoid as much of that as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and hand off to Alexa, who's going to discuss where the budget is at right now.
Thanks, Josh. So as the commissioner said in her report, I'm going to provide a high-level overview of a comparison between CHE's recommendation, the governor's recommendation, and the House's version of the budget as of now. So first we'll start with our outcomes-based funding. As you probably remember, CHE's recommendation was to fund outcomes-based funding at 7%, with 5% reallocation and 2% new money in both years. The governor's recommendation came out with funding, outcomes-based funding at 7%, with 6% reallocation and 1% new money in the first year, and then 5% reallocation and 2% new money in the second year. And then the House's past budget was to sustain all of the university's operating appropriations at their fiscal year 21 appropriation levels. Just so you're aware, this restores the 7% reserve that was placed on them for this year. And then in fiscal year 23, their version of the budget was 7% outcomes-based funding with 5% reallocation and 2% new money. Okay, now we'll get into the rest. So for capital, for CHE's recommendation, the governor's and the House budget, they all had no new higher education capital projects funded. And then repair and rehabilitation, CHE's recommendation was to fund it at 0.5% over the biennium using the R&R formula. And then the governor's recommendation and the House budget sustained each institution's fiscal year 21 appropriation, so not through the R&R formula. Okay, and then for dual credit, all of the versions are the same. CHE's, governor's, and the House budget are all funding dual credit at $50 per credit hour. And then line items, they all have no new line items and no increase to any of the line items. And then finally, for student financial aid, they all, CHE's, governor's, and the House budget all sustained the fiscal year 21 appropriations, but the only difference is that the House budget, they funded the teacher residency grant at $2 million over the biennium. And if you remember, this was previously the teacher residency pilot program, and this was funded only in fiscal year 20. So that is all that I have. As I said, it was a high-level overview. I'll provide another update at our next commission meeting in May, which the budget should be final by then. So if anybody has any questions.
Okay, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to go ahead and cover our agenda bill and where we're at with that. As you may recall, our agenda bill is Senate Bill 101, Education and Higher Education Matters. Just a quick recap, it does 3 things. It improves the high school graduation plan, ensures that students can access transcripts from closed institutions, and lastly, adjust the language around Next Generation Hoosier Educator Scholarship and their ability to sign into the contract to receive the scholarship. Our bill has gone through pretty well. It's been straightforward. There really hasn't been any opposition and everybody's been really supportive. Most recently, we passed out of the House Education Committee 13-0. So we should hit the House floor next week and hopefully smooth sailing for that. If you guys have any questions about that, let us know. I'm going to head on to the next one, Josh. We're going to touch on a couple of the education bills that are still moving. The Fafsa bill has been a big topic of discussion, and there actually was a massive shift in the bill this week. There was a really big amendment that went through that actually removed the requirement for this high school senior to complete the Fafsa. So it completely stripped the bill of what the intention was behind it and wrote something new in. So the new amendment, well, the new bill, I guess, it creates a Fafsa Completion Improvement Award for school districts. So it's basically a formula to calculate an amount of money for the school based off of their improvement of their FAFSA filing rate. So this is now going to be recommitted to Ways and Means. The amended bill did pass out of House Education 13-0. So the legislators were pretty on board with that. I'm not sure what'll happen to it in Ways and Means. We will see. This could make a pretty big shift in the funding formula and the money allocated to K-12. So I'm not really sure what will happen. Josh, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that they recognize the difficulty of getting low-income students to complete the FAFSA. So if you look at right now at our Livermore, Indiana FAFSA rankings showing who has completed, schools with higher free and reduced lunch rates have lower completion, and schools with lower free and reduced lunch populations have higher FAFSA completion. One of the things that this amended bill does now is it provides different funding amounts or a different incentives for students who are receiving SNAP, so food assistance, or TANF, which is cash assistance through FSSA. So that's used within the calculation. It was said in committee that Ways and Means is on board with this change, so we'll have to see the way that it plays out. If for any reason it does not move forward because of it does affect the K-12 funding formula, this is somewhat what the school organizations were asking for. They were asking for financial incentives to increase FAFSA completion. But if it does not move forward, since the language of Senate Bill 54 did pass the Senate, it could always hopefully find a home in conference committee to continue this requirement. We know that students who file the FAFSA are more likely to go to post-secondary education, and we want to make sure that our seniors are doing that, especially our low-income seniors.
Thanks, Josh.
So we're in favor of this bill?
Yes, we are. It's actually in our strategic plan.
The requirement, yes. The updated version, we're still reviewing. It literally got changed yesterday, so we don't know yet how this would impact the funding formula. So we're still reviewing how that will play out. But I think it's a positive thing to incentivize schools to increase their FAFSA completion.
Hey, this is John. What about this $1 trillion bill that's supposed to forgive student loans? Are you going to cover that at a later point, or is that
in on the last slide? I'll cover that, and I'll make sure to touch on the tax student loan provision as well within that. But we will cover that, yes, John.
Okay.
All right.
Josh, can you go to the next slide? Oh, there it goes. Okay, sorry about that. Just some updates on some of the other bills we are following. Senate Bill 1 and House Bill 1002 are the COVID immunity bills. Senate Bill 1 was actually signed by the governor back on February 18th, and 1002 was actually referred to Senate Judiciary, so it did pass the House, and now it's hanging out in the Senate, so we'll see what happens with that. I expect we will see some more movement on 1002. Senate Bill 93 was actually heard in committee yesterday. This is the bill that aligns with some of the federal regulations with providing non-resident veterans, spouses, or dependents in-state tuition if they enroll no more than 3 years after discharge or separation from the armed forces. And then this also includes the Indiana National Guard here in our state. So that is actually scheduled for a vote for next week, and we expect to see that go through. Senate Bill 316 is the bill we talked about where the Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs processes an appeal in 15 days right now and extending that to 45 days. This has made it through so far without any issues. It is now in the Veterans Affairs Committee, and we should see that be heard and voted through pretty shortly. Tuition support, 1003 and Senate Bill 2. This is the bill that affects ADM funding surround COVID-19. So ADM funding is just a reminder that this is the amount per pupil that K through 12 schools get. Currently, how the language is written, if a school provides virtual programs for students, they only receive 85% of ADM. But because of COVID-19, we had so many schools that had to create and go virtual. We had to shift that language to ensure that they could get their 100% funding for their students. They were able to do a temporary adjustment last year through the state board, but they needed to go through this session and make sure that that language was cleaned up. It actually passed, Senate Bill 2 passed in the Senate and the House, and then it's returned back to the Senate with amendments. So these bills will eventually become one bill. Just not really sure which direction they're going to go with that yet. Senator Rotz mentioned it in committee that they're going to do that and get that settled so that the schools can get what they need.
Pardon me, but what is ADM?
That is the amount of funding per pupil that schools get.
Average daily.
Yes, average daily membership, sorry.
Okay.
And then Josh, if you want to go ahead and take over.
Yeah, and I think that House Bill 1008 ties into what many of you were talking about earlier. And this is a bill that would provide funding for learning loss over the course of the pandemic, and it would fund at $150 million to address exactly what we're talking about, the impact of the pandemic on student performance and proficiency. So that right now has been referred to appropriations, and we'll be tracking on how this moves forward. We are hoping that as this goes on, that this will not only be able to be available for K-12 students currently, but our seniors who are rising into post-secondary education to help with summer bridge programs to address any losses that they might have had over remote learning during the pandemic.
So, excuse me, would that be tutoring?
It could come in a number of forms. It would actually be a grant process that organizations would apply for to provide supports like that. So it could be along the lines of the tutoring that you mentioned. It could be in even straight up summer school type options. It could be in the bridge programs we talked about, other forms. I think as great as they can get to address this pandemic, the better.
Yeah.
You know if there's any movement in the state to go to year-round schooling, especially for those who have been really mostly impacted by this?
I personally have not heard that discussion of any additional.
Sorry, Josh. I actually was listening to committee the other day, and there was a discussion and a bill on the opposite, actually, to go back to the traditional Labor Day, Memorial Day schedule. So that actually, Senator Cruz submitted that bill. It did not. It actually isn't going to a study committee as of now. So that opposite actually happened.
That's awful.
You are seeing, Chris, we have seen over the recent years, people moving to calendars where they have a not full year, but the calendar doesn't look like the one that Courtney's talking about, which is not going to, they're sending it to a study committee, but I don't think really there's an appetite to do what that's talking about. But they're having like a longer break in the fall, coming back to school earlier and not having as long of a summer break. So there are some of those kinds of things. But, I agree with you. This idea of moving back to an agrarian calendar just doesn't really work with where the economy is now, where families and the learning loss that takes place in the summer, especially for those who are not in enriching environments in the summer where they do that, again, drives the disparity farther. So, you raise an important issue, but one that I don't think really has any traction this session.
Okay, thank you. Keep plowing backwards.
1397 deals with the governor's workforce cabinet creating a catalog of various opportunities that students could take advantage of, such as work-based learning, apprenticeship opportunities, as well as information about the Workforce Ready Grant and what programs and providers qualify for that. This would allow this catalog would be made available to predominantly high school students who may be interested in these type of opportunities, but it could also be used for adults or individuals out of the workforce. The course access program bills that we're following, we mentioned this in February. This would allow students to take classes virtually from a different district if their school district does not offer the course. There are a lot of lessons that we can learn from the pandemic, especially around remote education, that would allow for this to be improved upon. If you think about dual credit and what we're facing with the potential cliff of dual credit instructors due to the HLC requirements, there's a real opportunity here for schools to offer dual credit courses across district through the course access program. And this was heard in Senate Education, or HB 1438 was heard yesterday. School about accountability for 1514. We talk about accountability, I feel like, almost every year. This would establish an online dashboard. This is be a couple years out before all this would go into place. And it would allow the State Board of Education to change A to F to more of a GPA type structure for a different grading system. And it does place the hold harmless again for the 2021 academic year.
So they think that there won't be any Fs, there'll just be a 60 instead of an F. Is that the idea?
I think it would be up to the state board on how they would do
Yeah.
that. It doesn't
Yeah.
outline.
They don't like Ds and Fs, so they'll do numbers instead. They'll make 70 an F probably.
Yeah, and eventually we'll change that as well. So
Yeah.
they'll be up. They're updating that. So hopefully we'll see. That'll be up to the State Board of Education over the coming years to figure out what that ends up looking like. As long as the bill passes through. 1553 it amends the Next Generation Hoosier Educator Scholarship Program that we operate. It allows us to give priority to low-income students, high-need fields where we're seeing shortage areas, as well as it adds GPA as one of the qualifying items as well. So we will have to update our process and our program on that. We will actually be awarding next week the 5th round of the Next Generation Hoosier Educator Scholarship recipients by the end of the week next week. It also changes our National Guard supplemental grant. It brings it in line with our other military-based aid programs, and it allows this program to cover graduate credits. So if you're in the National Guard, you can use the supplemental grant to pair up with your National Guard aid to cover any costs towards graduate credits. It's a strong recruitment tool for the Indiana National Guard. House Bill 1549, this one would require the Department of Education to establish a Cambridge International program. Cambridge International is similar to, let's say, AP or International Baccalaureate. It is an early college credit program. This would have the department essentially administer it the same way that they do AP. The language in the bill is almost a copy and paste with AP replaced by the Cambridge International name in there. So it would mirror that almost directly. It would also require us to work with various other agencies to create a clearinghouse for prior learning assessments and to develop model guidance around work-based learning. So we'll see how that goes. Right now, for the prior learning assessment clearinghouse, it would just be collecting that information and making that available. The work-based learning model guidance, as said, we would have to put in explanation and examples for those. With that, that's the last real major bill that we're following that's moving. So I do want to move into briefly, and since it just passed yesterday, I haven't had as much time to dive too deep into this round of federal funding around the new COVID relief package. It is expected to be signed into law on Friday. For higher education, it has $40 billion for our colleges and universities that will be distributed under the same manner as the last round. So it looks at full-time, or I'm sorry, it looks at enrollment in Pell. It also, for this round, it mirrors more the CARES Act than the second round, and that half the funding needs to go directly to students in form of emergency grant. This is more money than the prior relief packages, so the institutions will see a significant amount. They are across the country. Our colleges and universities are needing clear guidance on exactly how the funding can be spent, because it does say in the language for lost revenue due to COVID, but it's unclear if it can be spent for, let's say, appropriation cuts, let's say losses in enrollment that led to lost revenue. Colleges and universities across the country are still waiting for that explanation from USDOE. There is a significant amount of K-12 funding in the bill, $130 billion for K-12 that will flow in the same way, which would be Title II or Title I funding. I apologize, too many titles to keep track of. That would flow through their proportion. It would go to the Department of Education, and they would have to release that funding out to our K-12 schools. To give an example, we don't know the exact amount of money, but under the last amount of funding, Indiana received around $880 million for our K-12 schools, and $130 billion is more than twice as much as it was in the last bill. So we could see a significant amount of funding flow to K-12 in this round, as well as there's funding for private education through what was the governor's fund as well. There's also 30 billion in aid to state and local governments, 350 billion, I apologize, for state and local governments. There are two items that are not just direct funding that I do want to touch on, and Commission Member Pop referenced that. The first one, there's a provision within the bill that allows for any forgiven loan for the educational loans to not be subject to taxes. So the reason that was added in is if there is some sort of student loan forgiveness in the future, if this was not added in, then that for those forgiven amounts, whatever amount they would be taxable for the individual. So this paves the way for some sort of loan forgiveness to be tax-free. That provision, I believe, is sunsetted after 2 years. It also makes a change to the 90-10 rule, which just says that for-profit institutions can get no more than 90% of their funding from the federal route, and it changes and updates what's included in that 90% portion. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Josh, I have a question. It's Chris Murphy.
Yep.
I sit on a board with the provost of the University of Michigan, and she said recently at a meeting that with the help that they had gotten from the federal government last year, they had almost virtually no impact, negative impact on their budgets for the year. Do we know what the last program did for our colleges and universities and what that looks like? And then do we have any idea what this will do for them?
So we know from the CARES and then from the Consolidated Appropriations Act, we know the amounts that were given to the institutions, and we know the amount that they had to spend on the school or on the students and they could use themselves. I can send that to you so you can see what that looks like. We have that broken down.
That gives us what went to them. That doesn't tell us what their budget looked like with it.
Yeah.
I mean, what ended up happening in their fiscal year? Were they dramatically negative, just a little bit negative, break even, or positive relative to what they had planned for the year before COVID hit?
That's a good question. I don't know for each of our institutions off the top of my head. I know that they'll be presenting next week before Senate Appropriations, and that's likely something that's going to be asked. But we can reach out to the institutions to get a breakdown for you of what they can provide and what this looks like around their loss of revenue and then their increased costs and how that impacted their budget.
Great, thank you.
Other questions for Josh? Thanks, Josh and Courtney. That is very helpful to see where things are. We will watch and wait. At this point, we will move to our next item. Shortly after the COVID-19 pandemic began, the U.S. Census Bureau, in collaboration with other federal agencies, created the Household Pulse Survey, which examines how the pandemic has affected areas like employment, housing, healthcare, and education. We have an expert on our staff, Sean, who has analyzed this report and is going to give us a summary. Sean, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize. My computer stopped for a moment. I want to start off by also recognizing and thanking everyone for a really interesting conversation to start off the meeting. One of the downsides of having a thoughtful and engaged commission member is that a lot of times they preempt some of the things that you want to say. So I apologize if I cover a little bit of ground that was already discussed about a half hour ago. This survey is done by the U.S. Census Bureau. It was created specifically for the pandemic. Let's see if there we go. So when the Census Bureau creates something, they usually spend a decade or more calling it experimental. That's just the sort of cautious people that they are. But they're usually pretty forward thinking. As a little bit of a trivia aspect, the company that we all know and love as IBM started off as a contractor for the 1890 census, where they created electronic computing processes for the census. So Census has been doing a lot of interesting experiments for a long time. What this one was specifically designed to do is really just try to capture to what extent the pandemic has affected Americans' lives. And it includes everything from employment, healthcare, housing, health, and the thing that we're particularly interested in, how the pandemic has affected education. One of the notable things about the Census Household Pulse Survey is that it was designed specifically to be rapid response. Most census information usually comes out a year or more in arrears. And so we are always looking, for example, at attainment rates that are a year or two behind the times. This one has been coming out almost continuously since the late spring. They've been asking different questions throughout the process, and the later questions have been a little bit more geared towards what we're interested in, post-secondary education. First, I want to do a little bit of a level set, and that's how the country, and specifically Indiana, has moved towards telework. And so here you can see Indiana is a little bit on the lower end in terms of number of households who moved to telework during the pandemic, but it still represents a pretty significant amount. Nearly 1/3 of households had at least one adult who substituted normal in-person work for telework. That's pretty astounding. To have 1/3 of Hoosier households doing that, and that we're on the lower end of the country in this. So how did this affect college plans? As I believe it might have been Chris Murphy, or maybe it was Mcallister who mentioned it earlier, we kind of broke into roughly thirds. 1/3 did not change their plans. 1/3 did cancel all of their plans, and then 1/3 they changed their plans to the extent that courses changed. Either courses moved online, or maybe they moved to different institutions. They took a little bit more or a little bit fewer classes. This differs a little bit when you drill down by income. Roughly speaking, folks who were towards the lower end of the spectrum were more likely to cancel all of their academic plans, whereas folks in middle class and upper class were more likely to say, well, we've moved online, but we're not canceling our plans. One of the more interesting aspects of the survey is they start to dig into why it is that you canceled or changed your plans and how you did so. And so there's a lot going on this chart, but I'll try to walk you through it. The left hand is the percentage of all respondents who said this or that was on their minds. So for example, 29% of potential students said the institution they were planning to go to changed the content of or their format of the classes. Another 21% said their financial ability to pay for classes changed. Now, when you look to the right hand, what did respondents do in response to these aspects? So of those folks who said that their institution changed the content or formats, about 36% wholesale canceled their plans. For those who suddenly, because of the pandemic, had difficulty paying for college, 73% canceled all of their plans. Of course, concerns about COVID also factored heavily into plans cancellation, as well as caring for others. This is something that I know we've talked a little bit about, and there's a lot of both anecdotal stories as well as the data are starting to bear out that the pandemic was particularly hard on caregivers, folks caring for either children or disabled adults, parents, relatives, spouses. The vast majority of those folks canceled all of their college plans. we also already talked a little bit about what's the long-term impact. So I'm not going to belabor this, but there are some pretty significant differences when you start to drill into both income as well as how the pandemic affected your income. If you lived in a household where one or more adults lost their job, you tended to either skew towards learning, spending a lot less time on learning, or a little bit more. That's kind of a weird sort of dynamic. And I think it really kind of bears out that either parents had a little bit more time to spend with the student, or in many cases, unfortunately, your households was going through a pretty big crisis in terms of employment loss. And some other notes on learning loss and just educational access as well. About 2/3 of students in Indiana households making less than $50,000 always had internet access. Over 90% of students in households making more than $50,000 had internet access, or always had internet access. And so there are some real gaps there when it comes down to internet access. Especially when you consider that $50,000 is close to the median household income in Indiana. So for us to say that only 2/3 of households under 50,000 had regular internet access for educational aspects, that's a significant learning loss. This is not from the census, and I tried to color it differently to make sure. This is from a Pew survey that was released last week, and this starts to also point towards the K-shaped recovery as well as the role that higher education plays into access to jobs and employment. So Pew asked, are your finances better or worse than they were before the pandemic? When you break it out by educational attainment, the more education you have, the more likely you're to say that your finances have actually improved during the pandemic. In fact, about 36% of workers with a bachelor's degree have said that their finances improved, and only 15% said their finances got worse. Compare that to folks who have either some college or high school or less, and you can see that this is sort of the beginnings of that K-shaped recovery that we've all already talked about. When you break it out by income, a similar story. Not surprisingly, because as we all know, education is highly correlated with income. So similar to if higher educated people are going to say that their finances are a little bit better, wealthier folks have also said that their income has improved compared to folks who were not making as much going into the recession. I think this also really speaks to the types of jobs that folks have. Those who were able to move remotely were more likely to both earn more and were more likely to have a bachelor's degree. Those folks who were more likely to lose their jobs were more likely to have jobs that have to be done in person or could only be done in person, and were more likely to earn less or to not have a bachelor's degree. And of course, this will, as we've talked a little bit about, this will factor into educational outcomes for a long time to come in terms of being able to afford college, as well as being able to support children and students. And of course, we're not out of the woodwork yet. This gets to cash crunch issues that a lot of families are facing. And so as we start to look forward to fall 2021 in terms of getting more students to go, we have to recognize that for a lot of families, their balance sheets are still going to need months, if not years, to recover. A lot of families either took on more credit card debt or delayed payments or dipped into savings. And that will be a factor when it comes to encouraging and helping more students to go to college, because we're not going to be at the same level of savings that we were prior to the pandemic. And so, for example, as of, and I think this is as of February 15th, 9% of Indiana households are behind on their rent or mortgage and have zero to little confidence that they will be able to pay next month on time. Nationally, we've had a fivefold increase in terms of mortgages that are 90 days delinquent, and the 90 days delinquent is usually a marker of mortgages that are in pretty bad shape. And so Indiana is one of the harder hit states in this regard. And so this is something that, though just a quick snapshot, may be indicative of just the overall economic picture that we're going to be working with for a long time to come. So where to from here? And so we've already talked a little bit about some of these aspects. Outreach, of course, is going to be an especially big part of our strategy going forward, and perhaps more now than ever. It's important to be able to reach students across the state and be able to help them figure out what's the right path for them, and to help them understand ways to afford college, and to also understand the return. Thinking back a few slides to what we showed in terms of the higher levels of education you have, in many ways, the more secure your job is, especially during a crisis like this. We also want to make sure that as a state, we continue to improve access to high-speed internet. Again, your ability to access the internet heavily dependent on your household income and also where you live. As we all know, there's a real gap in terms of internet access when it comes to highly populated areas versus rural areas. And so even though, generally speaking, 2/3 or more of all Indiana K-12 students were able to regularly access the internet for educational experiences during the past year, I don't think any of us would be satisfied to say 2/3 is good enough when it comes to being able to access the education that you need. We've also talked a little bit about the fact that many students are going to be behind, and we've got to find ways to help them catch up, whether that's intensive advising, whether that's through summer classes, whether that's through remediation. We would expect that there's going to be a lot of students who probably need a little bit more top off in terms of remedial work over the next few years, perhaps. Again, we also want to think through how do we make sure that college remains affordable to Hoosiers. Again, with the K-shaped recovery, there's going to be some families who find they're a little bit in better shape. They were able to save on gas by not having to commute to work. They were able to save here and there by, essentially staying at home. But there's going to be a lot of other families who are going to be struggling for a long time to come. Indiana has a very robust financial aid system that's almost exclusively geared towards need-based aid to begin with. But of course, there's always other ways to try to tackle financial aid to make sure that students who need it are able to access it and able to afford college. And then finally, looking back towards that rent and mortgage side, as well as other things that we know, for example, families were much more likely to borrow or to rely on credit cards to get through the pandemic. Hoosier families are going to be facing a credit crunch or a cash flow crunch for at least a little bit longer. And so one of the things that we might need to think through is how do we encourage them to go to college, but also make sure that we don't, get them up to the line and then have a $10,000, $20,000 bill waiting for them right away? Are there creative financial solutions that we can find to help them through this period so that they're able to afford to go and or to pay it off? Some of these might include delayed billing or more exploration or encouragement of income share agreements or income-based repayments for loans. And so, of course, this is something that will continue to emerge, and I'm sure we'll continue to have other ideas and hear more from both this survey as well as families themselves as they come through. It's one of the things that was really shocking digging through the data are just the sheer numbers of people affected. It's one of those things where at a certain point when you work with tens of thousands of data points, you sometimes forget that there are real people at the end of each of those data points. And it's a pretty significant portion of the population that I think will be looking for to assist in any way, shape, or form for the coming time. So I wish I had more good news, but this is 1 year out from the pandemic. I think more than ever, the Commission's mission is vital to the recovery of the state.
Thank you so much, John. I'm sure there are questions or comments.
It's sobering.
Yes, that it is. That it is. Overwhelming in some ways, and certainly not a short-term fix, but something we definitely need to address. Thank you so much, Sean. That was really excellent material and extremely helpful to everything else that's been said today as well. I think we'll move on to our next presentation, and maybe that'll leave time for discussion about all these things later in the meeting. The next item, the Commission staff will provide an overview of the 2019-20 Administration of Indiana's state financial aid programs, which is another big component part of all this. Since there are a number of staff presenting, Josh, we're going to ask you to kind of start things off and introduce the team as we go forward. So we'll turn it over to Josh.
Happy to, thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if I can get this to work this time. 1 second. All right. Okay, so thank you, Madam Chair. Today I'm going to go ahead and provide an update on our fiscal year 2020 spend for state financial aid. Today I'm going to be joined by two individuals. I just want to say that since Colby left to join Ivy Tech, I've had the privilege of working directly with our financial aid team in administering state financial aid since August. And it's been my pleasure to work with the following two individuals as we do this. I've learned that we don't even need Colby anymore. We can just rely on everyone else on this. So I want to first introduce Angel Mcallister. She's our director of financial aid support center, as well as Michelle Rogers, the director of financial aid operations. They're going to join me in this. Every year we provide this update on the spend for financial aid. We thought we'd provide a little bit more this year. We wanted to talk about, what does the administration of state financial aid look like here in Indiana? What does that actually mean? We will talk about the spend, and at the end we'll close out with some of the early signs of what the pandemic is doing for this current year's financial aid spend, what we're doing to prepare for next year, and what we're looking at in some of the changes. And I think it ties back to some of the conversation that you all had at the beginning of this of this meeting. Additionally, I don't think Commission Member Bland is on. If he is, I think over the past year, or last year, he had asked during this presentation from Colby about not just the inputs, so not just the funding that we're spending, but the outputs and what that will look like, or what is our return. And that is something over the course of the next year we're committed to providing more than just the graduation rates generally or for our 21st century scholars, but doing a deeper dive into some of the programs that I'll mention as we move forward.
I think he's here. He's on the call.
I apologize then, Dennis. I didn't see you there. So I will go ahead then and introduce Angel Mcallister. As I said, she is our Director of Financial Aid Support, and she's going to give a brief overview of what it looks like for us to administer state financial aid and how we do that here in Indiana. So Angel, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you. If you want to tell me when to advance slides, I'll do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh, for that. Just a quick introduction. So as Josh stated, I am the director of the Financial Aid Support Center. And so this will just be a brief overview of the Financial Aid Administration and just a little bit about the Financial Aid Support Center and our role within the Commission. So Indiana's financial aid programs play a vital role in helping the Commission meet the 2025 big goal of having at least 60% of Hoosiers hold a quality degree or credential. And within that, the Financial Aid Support Center provides direct support to students, parents, colleges, and other partners concerning Indiana's student financial aid programs. Just to name a few of the other partners that we do communicate with or kind of work alongside with administering the financial aid, we have the Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs and various others came. And so within the Financial Aid Support Center, I like to call it just the one-stop shop. And so there's like 3 prongs within the center that we're just going to discuss. The first one is the financial aid operations, which Michelle Rogers is our director of the financial aid operations. And so you'll hear from her here in a little bit. But Michelle's role within the Financial Aid Support Center is to just do a lot of the back end work to make sure our financial aid programs, that they're all up to date, to make sure that the applications are available and that they're functioning properly within one of our systems, Scholar Track. Michelle also oversees many of our with the Indiana Department of Revenue, just to ensure that everything is properly within that, to make sure that there are no discrepancies with the applications. Michelle also oversees our student stipend, our teaching stipend programs, as well as our William Crawford Minority Teacher Scholarship as well. Aside from financial aid operations, we also have a college support subset that we kind of work through, and that is primarily managed by our assistant director, Catherine Carver. So she communicates regularly with our college financial aid offices, just making sure that everyone is up to date and up to speed with our programs, putting together webinars and other trainings, just to make sure that we are working so that they can continue to serve theirs. And then the last one is our direct student support, which I'm actually going to dive just a little deeper into that one. And that within that, we're going to just talk a little bit about our financial aid support specialist, which is on the next slide. Hopefully I'm not cutting in and out. And hopefully you all can hear me clearly. So just a little bit about—
You are, Angel. You are cutting in and out a little bit. So I don't know if there's any way you can adjust anything what you're doing. All the rest of you, if anybody is not muted, would you make sure you're muted? That might help a little bit, but you're most of the time it's okay, but every once in a while we're losing you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Hopefully we're okay. I didn't change my connection. My internet connection should be good. So our financial aid support specialists, they're currently— Let's try that. Yeah, we'll go ahead. We'll try that to see. All right. Are we better? Hopefully.
Yes, that's better.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. I do apologize. Currently we are completely staffed. We just have 4 financial aid support specialists. And so their role is to communicate directly with our students and parents. Prior to COVID, we would have some in-person meetings where our students or parents will pop into the office just to sit with someone one-on-one to discuss their financial aid situation and to receive some resources, but then also to just get a better understanding of other financial aid programs. So prior to COVID, we did have some in-person meetings, but now it is primarily just phone calls and emails. Our financial aid support specialists do oversee 3 call queues currently. The first one is our 21st Century Scholars Call Queue, where that call queue is geared primarily towards just 21st Century Scholar students. That's at the secondary and post-secondary level. In addition to that, we have just our Student Support Center call queue. Within that call queue, it's students will call and have questions about all of our state financial aid programs. And then the last one, which we just implemented in August of 20, which is the Level Jobs Workforce Ready Grant Call Queue. That one is a little special because those students have a separate number that they can call into. All numbers are toll free, but they have a separate number that they can call into to receive some direct support. So they actually get to bypass any prompts that the other 2 call queues have. And so just a few numbers of some calls that we've done. So in 2019, we did receive 17,017 phone calls, and these are calendar year numbers. So not within the academic year, but just within the calendar year. And so 2020 last year, it increased just by a little bit. And so we reached 17,045. And so, as I stated, our financial aid support specialists do communicate with our students and parents and other partners via phone calls, but also emails. And so, on average, the Financial Aid Support Center receives about 150 to 200 emails daily, and that's across 7 mailboxes. We usually respond back within 24 hours, but during the periods where there's a higher call volume or there's an increase or influx in emails, we try to set our goal at no longer than a 48-hour response rate. You know, just like many of you and myself, whenever we reach out to someone, we're looking for an answer kind of instantly. And so we kind of want to give that same customer service to our students and parents who call us. We realize that timing is so necessary for our students' financial aid. And so we want to make sure that we're getting back to them at a really good response time. And in addition to calls and emails, the Financial Aid Support Center also oversees our appeals process. And so annually, we process about 1,800 financial aid appeals. And so the appeals process is so crucial, especially during this time where we've lived through a pandemic where a student could lose their financial aid due to various reasons, one being submitting their FAFSA late, the other being not meeting the credit completion requirement. And so due to extenuating circumstances, we allow our students to just present their circumstance with some documentation and just kind of explain what happened, what hindered them from meeting their requirement. And so we do review those. The goal is to review those within 21 days. Right now, we are meeting that goal and we're completing appeals within 10 to 15 days. Again, it's so crucial and it's necessary that we respond back to the students as soon as possible because we want to make sure that they're receiving their financial aid. And then lastly, so this year we are launching a CRM. It's the new implementation of Microsoft Dynamics 365. And the goal with launching this is to really streamline our daily processes and capture real-time data to improve our customer service. So one of the challenges that we've had over the past couple of years is just getting a great snapshot of how many emails we're receiving and how many of those emails we're actually processing daily. It's challenging because Outlook just does not give that to us. If so, we'd have to reach out to IoT just to kind of get that data. But Microsoft Dynamics is actually going to allow us to gather that data. And so like I said, our goal is to continue to just move forward. Our goal is to continue providing the best customer service that we can. And so Microsoft Dynamics is going to actually help us do that. It's actually going to also help us to create a more streamlined workflow for the financial aid support specialists as well. So that is all that I have. Like I said, this is just a brief snapshot of the financial aid administration. It's worthy of a longer presentation, but due to time, hopefully that was thorough and informative.
Thank you, Angel. And just want to highlight the fact that Angel does a lot of great work to make sure that we are streamlining and responding to families quickly and making sure that we're able to effectively administer all of our programs. So with that, I'm going to get into what our fiscal 2020 spend. So this is the academic year 1920, and it's predominantly prior to the impacts of COVID. Most of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic happened after our 2019-2020 spend. We will touch on that a little bit in the end. So just to level set and remind everyone, we're first in the Midwest and fourth in the nation for need-based financial aid. And during fiscal year 2020, we administered 21 different financial aid programs with expenditures totaling just under $360 million. If you look at our higher education or budget total, state financial aid makes up roughly 18% on an annual basis on any given year of the higher education budget. And you may recognize these slides from prior years, so I just want to go over what our spend has looked like amongst the various programs, why it's going up and down, and then what we anticipate for 2021 and 21-22. So if you look at fiscal year 18, which would have been our peak in spend, that was when students who enrolled in the 21st Century Scholarship at the height of the recession would have been moving their way through our financial aid program. So we are seeing a gradual expected decline over the last 2 years in spending. With that, the 13 million drop that we saw came from roughly 10 million in reduction in the Franco Banning grant and 5 million in reduction, as you'll see, from the 21st Century Scholarship. Our biggest increase across the programs happened with the Next Level Jobs Workforce Ready grant, and we nearly doubled that, which we'll show here in a little bit later. Our expenditures by institution type, it's just broken out there. They are remaining fairly steady. There's been no large fluctuations in the number of or in the percentages of amount of funds being spent, either our 2-year public, our 4-year public, or our private institutions. I will say that we have significantly fewer approved proprietary institutions for state financial aid, so that spend over the last 5 years has gone down. But since it already was a lower percentage of the budget, we're not seeing a significant percent dropping out of the proprietary spend. This is a breakdown of the spend, and we'll send all this out. It's available on the website, but we'll also send this out to you as well of how the funding is broken down, with the 21st Century Scholarship making up nearly half of our expenditures during fiscal year 2020. As you can see, the Workforce Ready grant is 4.5 million, and it was in the 2 million range previously in the prior year. We saw a slight decrease in the total recipients for fiscal year 20. We do hope and we do anticipate that if we can round the corner of this pandemic, as it appears we are, that we will hopefully see a bounce back across the institutions, and therefore seeing an uptake in the number of recipients that we have for next year. And then recipients by institution. 4-year public's held pretty steady. We did see a decline at our 2 years from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20, and then private institutions and proprietary held the same. And again, this is the information broken out by award type, the number of recipients, with the O'Bannon grant being the vast majority of our actual recipients of funding. The average award by institution, as you'll see, the private institution amount is the largest. That it has to do with legislative code requiring the Franco Banning grant to be twice as much at our independent colleges as it is at our 4-year public institutions. With that said, the private institutions do receive a smaller 21st Century Scholarship amount than some institutions due to their 21st Century Scholarship amount being based on an average amount at the 4-year public institutions. Average award by type. The one outlier you'll see on this is the primary care scholarship. This is a small scholarship program that's ran only to Marian University for their College of Osteopathic Medicine. That program would requires individuals who receive it to work in Indiana in a primary care field upon graduation from medical school. So outside of that, we saw somewhat of a drop in some of the averages of these, and like I said, I'll go ahead and break those down by type. The overall average went down by about $100. One of the things that I do want to note, part of the drop that we may have seen, and it'll take a little bit for us to flush everything out on this one, is that during 1920, up until the pandemic, it was one of the best financial years that we had seen. So the amount of demand, since we are such a need-based scholarship, would explain some of the reduction in the Franco Banning grant. So I'll go ahead and cover 4 of our programs fairly quickly, and feel free to stop at any point if you have any questions about the data that we're showing. So as mentioned before, we saw about a $5 million drop in our 21st Century Scholars expenditures, that having to do with the recession increased cohorts starting to graduate out of the Scholars program. So we saw that starting to manifest itself in 1920. The average award did go up slightly. And we did see, as I mentioned, a reduction in recipients due to the smaller amount of cohorts. One of the things that is encouraging is that due to the smaller high school cohorts going through, we would expect a larger drop-off, but due to increase in persistence and graduation rates, we're seeing it stay fairly steady around 20,000. And then just a quick breakdown of the recipients by institution type. With that, for the Franco Banning grant, just as a reminder, this is the Franco Banning grant grid. You all approve this each year, and we'll be looking at this again when May comes around. The Franco Banning grant is kind of the way that I would describe it is Indiana's version of a Pell Grant, and the amount that you receive is based on a few factors. It's based first on what type of institution you attend, public, private, or proprietary. It's based on your need as determined by the Fafsa, and it's determined on whether or not you are meeting the benchmarks needed to graduate on time. So if you graduate, or if you're earning 30 credits per year, you get one amount, 20 credits per year, you get another amount, and we also include performance incentives within the Franco Banning grant. We saw a reduction in the amount that we were expending for the Franco Banning grant this past fiscal year, that being, again, due to a reduction in individuals in recipients, as well as a reduction in need at that point in time. The amount stayed fairly steady, and as I mentioned, we did see that reduction in demand for the Franco Banning grant. The biggest drop-offs, as you can see, we lost just around 1,000 at our 4-year publics, and then about 500 at our 2-year public institutions. The tuition and fee remission programs that we run, just as a reminder of to what those are, they are it's commonly referred to as CBO amongst our state financial aid community. This program provides deceased or disabled veterans, the children of deceased or disabled veterans, tuition-free attendance at our public institutions. It also provides funding for children of deceased public safety officers and their spouses, former POWs or MIA, and various other public safety categories that allows them to attend tuition-free at our public schools. This program has been on a steady rise since 2016, and you may remember there were significant reforms that were added to this program in 2011, I do believe, to address some of this spend, as well as to make sure that we're able to fully fund this program. Those reforms, though, were only required of the children of veterans who enlist after July 1st, 2011. So most of those veterans do not have children in college yet. We anticipate we will not see the full effects of those change until about 2045, when we'll start seeing the full effects of those change on post-secondary or on this program. So this is one that we have a long time horizon to actually plan out on because of the way that the law is structured. We saw a significant increase in the amount of the average award, but we did see a reduction in the number of individuals accessing this program. And again, you can see the breakdown here for public versus 2-year and 4-year. We do not have the scholarship is not eligible at private or proprietary institutions, so there's no data around that. The reason it's only for our 2-year and 4-year public institutions has to do with if tomorrow the General Assembly elected not to fund this program at all, the institutions would still have to enroll this population tuition and fee free. I'll spend a little bit more time talking about the adult student grant today. I want to highlight some things around this program. We've seen significant fluctuations in the demand for the adult student grant. One of the things that you can see from fiscal year 16 to fiscal year 17, we saw a significant increase in the demand for the program. That had to do with the launching of the You Can Go Back program and the number of individuals returning. Each year we've seen some minor fluctuations with a pretty significant drop this last fiscal year. For the adult student grant, it is one of the few programs that we actually have for our need-based programs that has a freestanding application. So students who want to apply for the adult student grant do have to apply on a separate application. It's not just the FAFSA. We're working on an update to our system that would allow us to do more manual applications for select populations, and we're trying to figure out exactly who we want to target with this to incentivize use of the adult student grant as well as to focus on completion. As a reminder, the adult student grant is only available to students who are considered independent. Typically that means they're over age 24 or they're married, have minor children. This program does not apply to traditional high school age student or high school graduates. Again, the average award dipped slightly. The number of recipients, as with the expenditures, dropped. And then you can see that over time here. Then finally, the Workforce Ready Grant. We are currently, so this academic year, it's our 4th year of implementation, but last year was our 3rd year of implementation. And the demand and the uptake on this program has been significant since our launch. If you look back to the first year when it was limited to just independent students, we spent less than $500,000, and I'll explain a little bit more about that here in a second. We saw a significant increase, and then we saw another significant increase in 2020. As a reminder, the Workforce Ready Grant is the Commission's only last dollar scholarship. And what that means is all other financial aid is applied before we use the Workforce Ready Grant. So if you're Pell eligible, that applies first, and we come in and supplement. So when you look at this, if we are doubling in the amount that we're spending, we're actually seeing a larger increase in the number of people enrolling in these programs. And that's due to many of these are covered by Pell fully. So going into this fall, we expected to see another increase. And with the Rapid Recovery Program, we have seen that, and we will cover that at a later date. The average award, even though the number of recipients has gone up and the expenditure has gone up, has remained relatively steady around $2,000. The number of recipients, as I mentioned previously, has gone up significantly. This is the credit-bearing program only. There is a sister program that is a non-credit program those are programs that do not have to qualify for Title IV or federal financial aid. And I think this is just a really positive sign of the program that we're seeing the uptake and the increase on the Workforce Ready Grant. And then you can see the breakdown of the institution increase. Do want to highlight for for the fiscal year 20, The two institutions that were really eligible for the credit bearing were Ivy Tech and Vincennes. You can see the breakdown there. In the future, due to an expansion by the General Assembly, independent colleges have become eligible for the program. So in future years, we will see private institutions included in these numbers. And we do anticipate that will also increase the spend as well as increase the average cost of the program. And with that, any questions about the spend so far? All right, with that, I do want to hand it over to Michelle Rogers. Michelle is our Director of Financial Aid Operations, and she's going to cover a little bit about what we've seen as a result of the impact on FAFSA filing rates, as well as some of the early lessons, and we can cover what we're planning on doing here to address any changes. So with that, Michelle, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Josh. To go along with the beginning of the meeting, the commission meeting, the theme of the pandemic, we were looking at FAFSA completions as of the end of February. If you look at the first two groupings there, total FAFSA completed and FAFSA completed by Pell eligible students, you see a drop there. But I believe that is affected by the fact, if you look at the second grouping of the cohort 2021, that is the grouping that got hit the hardest of students who unfortunately fell into the March 2020, when they all had to begin going to virtual learning. They were the ones that were hardest impacted by this. I just heard that high school students will be able to go back to school. Just today heard about that. And so hopefully we will be able to close in on the gaps here with both the total FAFSAs completed with Pell eligible, as well as the cohort 2020-21. One of the things we are doing to help with that gap, we had just recently had the College Goals Sunday. We had emails, we are sending emails to scholars and to student renewal students. We're sending reminders to school counselors, and the commissioner recently did an op-ed. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I also do want to highlight as well is that we do hope that over the course of this month, we can close the gap for our cohort 2021. So the cohort 2021 are our current seniors. Last year, we saw a significant drop off in March in FAFSA completions due to that being the start of the pandemic. So we do hope we can turn this around over the course of the next month.
Thank you. One of the things we noticed that during the summer, we saw a 10.2% increase in demand of summer financial aid. We think that is due to the fact that students that could no longer go to school from the pandemic had to make up for classes. And so that increase, we believe, played a big part in that, had a big part in that. Despite enrollment declines, financial aid claims and recipients seem to remain steady. And also we noticed that the two-year colleges that unfortunately, although financial aid expenditures Ivy Tech did increase, the enrollment was in decline. Next slide. The number of financial aid recipients with dependent children also declined, again, with students having to be home with their children for virtual training or virtual school. They really didn't, as we've discussed earlier, they really could not have the stress of going to school as well as being there for their children to help them get through school. So that's why we had the decline. Another place we saw a decline is through our employer aid readiness network, which is the Earn Indiana program, where an employer receives up to 50% reimbursement for hiring high income eligible students into internships. Due to the pandemic, some businesses did close, and that's why we had a 30% decline. Our goal is to be prepared for what the potential post-pandemic expenditures will look like. And that's all I have.
Yeah, I want to highlight the dependent children decline. I know that Commissioner Member Peterson had mentioned this earlier, that we have seen a significant drop off on that, and we do hope to make that up this semester and over the course of the summer. But it is a population that we will target to return to receiving financial aid now that we can hopefully get them back into the classroom. And with that, we can answer any questions.
This is John. The Workforce Ready, those are jobs that where there's a need for certain skills in our business community. And so do those have to be related to a certain number of types of jobs? Are they limited to, like, we need electricians and we need computer people, we need nurses? Are they specific to certain skills?
Yes, they're specific to demand, John, and wage. And so we have about 150 certificates that we have a period of time with CARES dollars where we expanded to 200, but we have 5 sectors and certificates within those. So it's business and IT, health, transportation and logistics, building and construction, and advanced manufacturing. And then we've worked with the Department of Workforce Development to actually identify the demand for those jobs, and that there would be a wage, a benefit to the individual for getting that job, which we know has happened. We know that the median annual wage gain for one of those certificates has been $6,800. So yes, it is very tightly linked to the needs in the economy.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of figured that. Thank you.
Josh, this is just a simple question, but the adult grants, are they based on a specific number of hours that they have to be enrolled in, or how is that different from a regular grant?
Sorry, I was muted. For the adult student grant, you do have to be enrolled. You can be enrolled half-time, so at least 6 credit hours at that point in time to be enrolled, as well as being an independent student. So unlike our other financial aid programs, you do not have to enroll full-time for those.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that, but that answers the question. Thank you.
This is Chris Murphy. I also have a question. I believe it was said that you were down in the number of interns or the companies that were receiving help on the interns. Would you explain the program again and tell me, and I think the comment was said because they went out of business or they closed. Is there a disproportionate use of the internship program in hospitality or restaurants or events or that sort of thing, as opposed to the manufacturing sector or the knowledge sector?
No, we can get you information about the breakdowns of the programs. The reduction in the program was due to a reduction in internship opportunities at the businesses who were dealing with the pandemic. So when we're looking at this 30% decline, it was predominantly over the summertime where we saw that decline. So they were trying to figure out what was going on across all sectors. So they weren't bringing in as many internships. We do hope to see a boom on this summer and into the fall. We are preparing for an expansion into the high school program as well. And the Earn Indiana program, just to step back for a second, is our work study program. So it's a matching fund for employers who provide experiential-based internships for students. So it can't just be making copies or anything along those lines. Right. It has to be something along with what they're hoping to do.
But they're not necessarily in hospitality or?
No.
Okay.
No, I just think that there was, Chris, I think there was a slowdown on internships during this time. They couldn't have people in person. They hadn't figured out how to, in technology in some of those areas, maybe you did, but in a lot of them, you need to have the people there, and they just were reluctant to bring people into their places of business.
Yeah, some of the plants just plain shut down. They weren't there.
Do you have any other questions for Josh? Well, Josh, thank you, and Angel and Michelle, for a very thorough report. Every time I hear these, I learn more about the complexity of it all. But really, Indiana should be very, very proud of the program it has, and let's hope we get lots and lots of recipients. We have the good fortune to hear today from our outreach team. We don't get to do that often, but it's really good when we can. They're going to talk to us a little bit about how their roles have shifted in relationship to the pandemic, as well as the kinds of things they do. Since this is a big group, I'm going to let Stephanie kind of introduce it and introduce the team. So Stephanie, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I'll go ahead and tee this up while Barbie Martin, one of our outreach directors, goes ahead and pulls up the presentation. So Commissioner Lubbers came to us several weeks ago now and said, you know, it's been a while since the commission members have had the opportunity to hear from our outreach team. And I think she was pretty wise in doing so, unsurprisingly, after such a sobering group of presentations. I think it's going to be really nice to hear from a group of really mission-driven, inspired, creative, enthusiastic people who are, in spite of everything and all the challenges that this year has thrown us, have come up with creative solutions to continue to serve our communities and our students very effectively. And I'm really excited for you to hear from all of them today, and you will hear from almost all of them today. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Barbie, who's going to get us started. I'm trying to get this presentation to pull up. I think it just did.
Yep, you're good, Barbie.
Perfect. We represent kind of the feet on the ground for the commission. So Commissioner Lubbers just wanted us to take this opportunity to introduce all the members of the outreach team and give you a little overview of what we do for the commission, as well as kind of saying what we were most proud of in 2020 or how we handled that work with the changes that we all faced. So my name is Barbie Martin. I'm the Director of School and Community Outreach for the Commission. Mine is in this main office here in Indianapolis, and I provide statewide support. I direct partnerships and work with schools all the way from pre-K through the 12th grade. And I also supervise our outreach staff, our outreach coordinators, excuse me. I've shared this map before, but just for a little refresher and for people who may not have been with the commission the last time we presented, we have a total of 14 internal staff, 14 outreach staff members. We have 8 regions. You can see them on the map with the different colors. They are going to introduce themselves and talk about their work. We also have 4 internal staff members. On the pre-K through 12th grade side, there's myself, and then there is a community and school outreach manager. And then on the other side, we have post-secondary and career transitions. So we really take our students all the way through until they graduate from high school. And then they have another staff that helps them with that college transition, making sure that they persist. And then when they graduate, they know what their career options are. We have Scholar Corps and Vista, and Jared will explain a little bit more about that because that's on his side of the house. And we call this a coordinated service model because we couldn't do the work that we do without working very closely with school staff, primarily school guidance counselors, but we work with principals and superintendents and teachers and all kinds of other school staff members to make sure first that our students know about 21st Century Scholars, help them complete their activities, and then to make sure that they're aware that there are other financial aid options out there for them. And then we also work with various community partners across the state. We work with some at the state level where it's a statewide partnership, and then my coordinators work within their regions with local partnerships. I'm going to introduce our staff here in just a second, but you can see here just a few of the things that we work with. As you've heard from other members of the commission staff today already, FAFSA completion is one of our most important things that we do. All the work that we do with our scholars and with our other aid programs, that's the one step that they absolutely need to complete. So that takes a lot of our time and a lot of our effort. We work with Gear Up, and Jared again will talk with that a little bit. It's a federal program that we participate in. We work very closely with the Department of Child Services and an organization named Foster Success, working with foster youth and making sure that they are connected to educational opportunities. We work with the Indiana Latino Institute very closely tied with Greg Harrell, who's going to introduce himself next with Padres Estrellas. And I am personally on the board for College Goal Sunday. And so we work with that. That's a huge event that's held twice a year. This year, obviously, it was held virtually, and that presented some challenges, but it also was a really good way to still reach to families, even in this time. We have asked our staff to talk about what they were most proud of in 2020, given the challenges that we faced. For me, it was how quickly our staff, not just my team, not just the post-secondary team, but the commission as a whole, how quickly we were able to assess what was going on and make changes to still deliver support and services to all the students in the state of Indiana. And obviously it was very difficult at times, but we all realized the importance of the work that we do and making sure that all of those students still were able to get the support that they need. So now I'm going to let my staff members introduce themselves and talk about what they're proud of. We do have a few who had commitments elsewhere prior to today and couldn't be here, so I'm going to give a little statement for each of those.
All right, thank you, Barbie. Good afternoon, Commission members. I've had the privilege of meeting most of you, but have not yet connected with all of you. So it's wonderful to connect, especially sharing the great work that we're doing through our school and community outreach team. So my name is Greg Harrell, as Barbie said, and I serve as our school and community outreach manager between her and the outreach coordinators in pre-K to 12 outreach throughout the state. So in my role, just like you're going to hear from our outreach coordinators shortly, I participate in events and outreach that involve really our full portfolio of support, really starting things from 21st Century Scholar enrollment, promoting other facets of state financial aid programs and opportunities like Josh and his team discussed just a little bit ago, FAFSA completion. So of course, College Goal Sunday was just a week ago, and we do many other events to promote the FAFSA, and then college and career readiness. So a lot of that is created through our Learn More Indiana initiative, and something that we promote to our schools, starting really at the elementary school level all the way to students who are in high school. So where my role is just a little bit different is that instead of on being placed in a region, I kind of hover statewide as it relates to our team. And aside from that, another thing that I wanted to mention is that a large part of what I do really involves providing bilingual services to our families. So I provide both Spanish speaking interpretations as well as presentations to families and our learners. And then also kind of on the flip side, looking at translating our print and electronic materials for our families to be able to utilize. So it's something that we take a lot of pride in when we look at our immigrant populations. We're just sitting shy of about 400,000 here in the state of Indiana, so about 5% of the state's population. And all the research out there suggests that just here in a few years, the majority of our population growth is actually going to come from this specific population. So really, it's important for us to be proactive and intentional about the ways that we're engaging these families with the promise of higher education. So we've worked outside of just Spanish speaking materials. We now have our 21st Century Scholar information in 8 other languages, soon to be 9 outside of English. So that's kind of really quickly my role summarized. And the last thing that I wanted to kind of end with, Barbie asked us just to brainstorm things that we were most proud of during 2020 with so much that we've experienced. And I would just like to give a shout out to former commission member Alfonso Vidal, Stephanie, Barbie, our team, and my colleague Brittany Collins, who co-leads Padres Estrellas, which is translated to Star Parents with me, which is a program that we started looking to design in 2019 and really officially launched it in 2020 during the pandemic. And so that initiative really looks to kind of reimagine our outreach strategy, specifically the way that we are engaging and working with our Hispanic and Latino parents and community members. So they are actually on the ground just like us, promoting kind of things in terms of a two-pronged strategy, that being 21st Century Scholar enrollment, as well as interest in our Next Level Jobs Workforce Ready grant, which really dovetails nicely into what we do with our general outreach strategy all over the state and engaging students as much as parents. And so I'd love if anybody has questions later on to connect about Padres Estrellas. We're presently in 5 different communities, working in South Bend, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, Evansville, and Columbus. So thank you guys very much for all you do to support our work and our mission. And Barbie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Greg. Fred Jackson is our Northwest Outreach Coordinator. You can see the counties that he serves there. He was unable to be with us today. He is actually working with some of our scholars on their Scholar Success Program activities this afternoon. But when I asked Fred what he was most proud of during these challenging times, he said he's proud of our team and of the commission in general, how quickly we made adjustments during these challenging times, and how there was never a question of compromising the kind of service that we provide to our students and families. He said that we came together virtually to stay connected and to encourage one another for the great work and to provide support for everything that we do. And so I think that's really important to recognize that we wanted to make sure our students were well supported. Next is Dr. Verlesh Jones. She is also in a high school this afternoon. She is our Northwest Outreach Coordinator, so you can see her counties. And when I talked to her what she was most proud of, she said that she was most proud of the way that we embraced technology with our counselors during this time. With my assistance and with Jared's assistance, she said that she was able to provide counselors with detailed training during this time. As you can imagine, a lot of our counselors had a lot of questions about how things were going to work and if there were going to be any adjustments made to state financial aid or the Scholar Success Program. And she was very committed to creating these counselor meetings that we were able to do virtually and provide them with a lot of answers to the questions that they had.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Meyer, and I'm the outreach coordinator for the West region of the state. So I am very proud of being the West outreach coordinator because the West side is the best side, is our joke. So I'm most proud of my work creating and hosting a video series, both for students and their families in 2020. And it has become so popular with the schools that we are actually continuing on in 2021. So the catalyst for these videos was a group of scholars who asked for a YouTube series just for them, and how can I say no to my students? So with this video project, it allowed me to work with commission staff outside of our outreach team, which was really cool. And it allowed me to collaborate with students and their counselors more on ideas, different things that they wanted in the videos, and then also to flex my creative muscles a little bit more than just going out and kind of pounding the pavement, trying to get their activities done. It also temporarily replaces my traditional school visits, which was really important to a lot of my schools. So in 2021, our video series will branch out to incorporate community members, a wide variety of topics, and a lot more fun as our pandemic restrictions will lift. So I'm hoping to work through one of my IYI partners on a really cool Marvel partnership. So for anyone who's interested in that, I know the kids love it. So we're hoping we can get something rolling there. So thank you so much for your time and kind of getting to know us a little.
Hello, I'm Amy Parga, the North Central Outreach Coordinator. The thing that I'm most proud of this year is this past fall, I was surprised to be able to attend a career fair in person at the Carver Community Center in Kokomo. Considering the pandemic, I jumped at the chance because I knew it might be a rarity and one of the only times I got a live audience. It was primarily a series of presentations from motivational speakers, career resource professionals, to a group of people in Kokomo who would be considered needing the most need for these things, lower income, jobless, looking to start an education or finish an education. I knew this was going to be a good opportunity to share the information about what we do and what we offer in terms of programs and financial aid. So I took everything I had and threw it all at them at once, which is kind of like getting the best bang for my buck. I went over the next level jobs, a workforce ready grant, as well as how to file the FAFSA, financial aid, where to get help on that. And then I was also able to include 21st Century Scholars, as many of the people in the room were parents or people who were connected to other parents. Primarily, I think I'm most proud that I was able to share how important education was to their individual futures, to their children's futures, to the futures of our community and even our state. I think the message was well received because I was invited to speak at some other smaller agencies in the county. Afterwards, several people came up and said, can you come and talk to our group, and can you come and attend this? One of them was a women's rehabilitation center where many of the mothers had middle school children. We were able to talk about 21st century, talk about next level jobs for them. And I think it was hopeful, and I felt like they felt hopeful when I left. So I didn't get to do a lot of things like that this fall, and so far not so much this spring, but as we move toward more in-person meetings, I'm really hoping that opportunities like that come more often and that I can take more advantage of them. Thank you.
Okay, this is Barbie again. Allie is also unable to be with us today. She is our East Region Outreach Coordinator. And when she talked about what she is most proud of, for her, she talked about the resiliency of counselors and other school staff. She worked very closely with them, and together they figured out a whole new way of guiding students. She says that she has done more Zoom meetings than she can keep track of. But they provided a variety of ways where they could ensure that the students were still receiving information, that parents were able to get their children enrolled in the 21st Century Scholars Program, and recently, more importantly, getting the FAFSA to file. So she has done some things in person, but she's done lots of FAFSA events online. And so she said that's very important to getting them signed up all the way through wrapping everything up. She said without the counselor's flexibility, endurance, and partnership, she would not have been as successful as she was, and the transition wouldn't have been as seamless.
Good afternoon, Commission members, colleagues, and higher education folks. I'm Jose Medina. I'm the Central Outreach Coordinator. My region is Marion County, and that's it. I have the biggest county of Indiana. It means less driving, but more students, which is a pretty good trade-off in my mind. So when I try to think of positives of 2020, which I know most of us are really short in thinking of positives, I think mostly of how everyone in Indiana stepped up to help us in any way that they could while we were trying to figure out what life would be like in the pandemic. I'm most proud of how I was able to use my Spanish language skills to translate urgent videos from the Indiana Department of Health, Governor's Office, and other important departments at the beginning of this pandemic to get critical information out to the ears of Spanish-speaking Hoosiers, along with Greg Harrell. We led our skills to help out in any way that we could. I was also able to use these Spanish-speaking skills along with, my English-speaking skills to further our mission while we couldn't really meet in person. Barbie said briefly that we're the boots on the ground in our regions on the commission, informing and educating students and families of all our wonderful programs. Makes it a little bit harder to do that in person during a pandemic. However, I was able to do this by speaking about 21st Century Scholars, next level jobs, submitting the FAFSA on our YouTube channels, our Facebook page, on Facebook live sessions, on Telemundo Indie, and on the radio, doing a lot of spots. So it was a great way to kind of, as Barbie also said, we really adapted really quick, the outreach team, in furthering, keep delivering on our mission, to get people really invested in still thinking about higher education as everything else was seeming really clear at that time. So while, as vaccination rates go up and pandemic numbers go down on the infection numbers, we hopefully see a light at the end of this pandemic tunnel. I hope we all learned something during this dark time to make Indiana a little bit better for all with just the skills that we have that can make a huge impact, not just in higher education, but in Hoosiers' lives overall. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zachary Cullum, and I am the outreach coordinator for the Southwest region. So I believe I have the most counties, which means I am on the road a lot, but I always say it keeps me out of trouble. And it gets me in front of the students. So I'm happy to do that. I just celebrated my 4th year at the commission, so that's something that's really exciting. It's been a wonderful journey so far to work with the students of Indiana and work with the Commission for Higher Education. So all my colleagues and all of you, thank you so much for everything that you guys do. To say that this year was awful, I guess, for everyone is an understatement. The pandemic really has forced us to change almost everything that we had for the year. So the one thing that I do appreciate about our staff is our ability to pivot and put everything online and to work and meet the student and the counselors and the teachers and everything really where they're at, because we're all just trying to navigate this together and weed through all this as one body. So being able to meet them where they're at, it's been an interesting experience, but it's been beneficial. There's so many things that I think we have had to change that we're going to keep going forward. So that's something that I'm looking forward to doing, more Zoom meetings and Fafsa completions and things like that online to help serve a different population of students that normally wouldn't come to our in-face meetings. So with that, I think the thing that I'm most proud about is I'm very passionate about the data of the 21st Century Scholars. So making sure that I have spreadsheet upon spreadsheet that it works for me, but other people would probably look at it and think it's crazy. But it's something that is able for me to get information into the hands of students and counselors fairly fast, and being able to provide that for our team is something that I'm very passionate about. I do want to say that it's been interesting this year, but it's something that I think that if we embrace change, it's something that can lead to better results in the future. So I'm proud of what I have accomplished and what our team has accomplished, and it's one of those things that sometimes you kind of feel lonely being out in the you're out in your region. My nearest coworker is 120 miles away, but it never feels like we're alone when we're out in the field because we have the outreach team. As anytime that we need something or we have a question or there's a problem that we can't solve, we all have our different strengths that we can kind of pull together to resolve whatever issues going on or attack a problem in a different way. So I'm proud to be a part of this team, and I'm proud to serve the students of the state of Indiana. So thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Heather Cooper. I'm the Southeast Outreach Coordinator. And like everyone has said before me, this has been quite a learning experience, I think, for everyone. But something I've been especially pleasantly surprised about is that my counselors, my teachers, my students, community partners, everybody has pulled all of their resources to make this a stronger, healthier situation for our students in promoting their academic success. I was afraid that when this first happened, that not being able to have FaceTime with my counselors and students, that I was going to lose already wonderfully established relationships. But luckily I was wrong. Through phone calls, FaceTime, Zooms, and such, it may be stronger than ever. And working from home, I have been able to attend a lot more IYI cafes, and my IYI cafe person, Corey Jones, has been wonderful in introducing me to people and opened doors to more partnerships and shared resources, which in turn has presented me with more invitations to present to DCS, to community foundations, and other community-based organizations. So where it's not ideal, hasn't been ideal, it has not been as bad or as detrimental as we might have thought it was at first. But thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to head this over to Jared Wilson, and he's going to introduce himself and discuss what his side of the house does and let his team introduce themselves.
Well, hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having us. As Barbie said, my name is Jared Wilson. I'm the Director for Post-Secondary Outreach and Career Transitions. I believe I've had conversations with almost all of you. But essentially, as Barbie was saying, what we do on the post-secondary side of the house is we actually take it from when somebody has graduated high school or has gotten some sort of equivalency, helps to get them into whatever that certification program is, whether it's a next level job certificate or connecting them with DWD so that it's something that might be non-credit bearing certificate or as we would hope an associate bachelor's or beyond. We do a lot of things within this house, and we're a small but mighty team internally, but we have a lot of support on the ground as well. And Barbie, I think on the next slide, you'll be able to see kind of what we do there. So as you've heard, we do have a partnership with Purdue University, who owns the state Gear Up grant. We are sub-grantees, but for all intents and purposes, we are actually the co-owner of that grant. So we receive a large amount of money to put on support programs, not only for the Gear Up schools that are across the state, but for all Hoosier students to make sure that students are enrolling for the 21st Century Scholarship, completing the FAFSA on time, going to summer bridge programs as necessary, and kind of everything in between to get them college ready, geared up to get going. I personally oversee the Scholar Corps program with the assistance of several other people in the office, but I am in charge of Scholar Corps, which is on between 24 and 26 campuses across the state. They are working specifically with 21st Century Scholars to help provide support for those students. And then next we have our VISTA program, which is another AmeriCorps program similar to Scholar Corps, but is an internal AmeriCorps program. You'll actually hear from our VISTA member here in just a second, Cassie, and she'll kind of tee up some stuff that she's doing. We run the information around the College Scholar Success Program. We make sure that it was created over the past 3 years. We've really worked to build that program up. And now with this being the first year of implementation, we've really tried to get everything in line so that students know what's expected of them. They're supported from the college partners that we work with, but also the community partners so that they complete those activities and continue getting their scholarship. You can see all of the rest of the things we work with, the Stan Jones grant, the School and Community Partnership grant, which Brittany Collins oversees, which is money that comes from Gear Up. And then we have tons of Indiana or state partnerships like Indiana Black Expo, Indiana Talent Network, tons of different partnerships across the state. I will say probably one of the most, while I'm proud of a lot of what has happened over the past year and a lot of things that people have said, probably personally the thing that I'm most proud of is end of last spring, we were actually able to use some of the remaining Gear Up dollars to provide summer learning loss, COVID learning loss is what we call them, grants to colleges, universities, and community partners to make sure that students who are graduating high school and about to start their first year of college weren't getting too behind based on the learning loss that they might have experienced because of the pandemic. Because of those grants, we've actually had some great conversations with outside organizations, and hopefully, as Josh talked about a little bit earlier, we might be able to partner with some of those funds if it gets passed at the legislative area to provide some more support so that students don't continue suffering from the loss that they might have, the learning loss that they might have had because of the pandemic. So excited to look and see what that looks like for this summer as well. I think it goes to Brittany now.
Hi, everyone. So similar to what Jared mentioned, it's again really helping to support that ongoing transition as our students get ready to leave high school and matriculate, and also increase our engagement for adult learners. We've enjoyed the state partnerships and how things have really been able to continue from this past year into this year. I know when lockdown hit, there was a little bit of concern because that's typically the really busy season for a lot of us on this team. But I could say, echoing what other outreach coordinators and staff members have said, we probably could all be ready for our SAG after cards based on all of the amounts of on-camera experiences and media things that we have been able to do in this last year. And that's really what's been a part that I'm particularly proud of. that we can continue forward and provide opportunities to our students virtually. I know we're eager to be back in person. We've had a chance this year to start to go back into some of our Gear Up high schools and do more intentional things with their students and scholars and getting them prepared. But it's been a really, really wonderful opportunity to deepen some of our relationships with those education providers, community-based organizations, college partners, and more, because it was so easy for us to be able to connect virtually and really level set together in how we wanted to move forward, not only in recovering from COVID and the pandemic, but also in tackling some equity issues throughout the state as well.
Hello, I'm Cassandra Goodman. I'm the AmeriCorps Vista member at the Commission this year. My project, Rural Roads, Pathways to Improving Higher Education Attainment, focuses mostly on improving post-secondary enrollment rates in rural areas. If you'd like to hear a little bit more about that, I'll be presenting at the Student Success and Completion Committee meeting on April 27th. And I'm most proud of the Next Level Jobs Reddit post I created for the r/Indiana subreddit, which allowed the outreach team to reach a new audience through Reddit. So thank you.
So I think that's the end of our outreach team presentation. So you heard from a lot of them. We're so proud of all the work they do. And you know, they're the people who I think have the most direct interaction with folks on the ground. So if you have any questions for them or insights that you'd like to glean from them, I think they'd be happy to share.
Well, I think all of us are very impressed with everything that was said. I want to thank Stephanie and Barbie and Jared and all the rest of the team for a really insightful look at, I guess I just call it feet on the ground. It's really impressive to see the Commission's extended work happening with the partnerships that you're all are part of, the ones that you've created, projects that you're running, and the creative ways in which you've addressed the pandemic. And I feel a lot better about what's coming, knowing that you all are in the place to do that. So thank you all very much for the presentation.
Madam Chairman,
Thank you for letting us.
Question before they leave.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
It's Chris Murphy. The Yalili Foundation in the last year has given, I believe, a number of grants to various areas around the state to really work on the 21st Century Scholars Program and to get kids signed up much earlier. I know of one in the area that I come from that's in place. Can you tell me how you're plugging into that, what you're doing with that, if you are at all, or other kinds of activities that are really focused on just that issue?
We have worked with several of the areas that have chosen to take that as one of their Lilly focus. Sometimes it's just they need our help with applying for the grant. We help provide some data and some research information for them. But the ones that have gotten the grant, when they are actually able to put some of these programs into place, or these activities in place, that's where a lot of our outreach coordinators come in. They'll use the grant funds to set up these events, and then the members of my staff will go and present. Sometimes it gets very creative. I know in some places, local businesses have partnered with some of these grant recipients, and they hold special events at coffee shops and restaurants and things like that, places where families are likely to be. And so for the most part, it definitely would be our outreach coordinators who are on hand. But I know that I've worked with some of the schools on helping them with that application process at the beginning.
Good.
I really wanted all of you on the commission to meet these folks and to, whenever possible, those, we think always at a statewide level when we're meeting, for the commission meetings, and we think of big macro issues that impact all of higher ed. But, often I think there are opportunities to connect with these people in your areas of the state to find out what they're doing. And likewise, I think for those outreach coordinators, for you to reach out to our commission members, if you need someone to speak on the value of higher education and what their role is, and to make a connection in those individual areas. I know it's not going to be done on a weekly basis or anything, but I think there are unique opportunities to have this relationship be more than just something where you see a face once a year or so. And so they're doing great work, and I just really wanted to have a chance for you to know a little bit more about what they're doing in terms of promoting our programs and when we talk about student success, these are the folks who are out there really promoting it every day. So, you know, we'll try to keep you aware of what's going on. But if there are any opportunities for us to kind of cross-pollinate what you do and what they do, let's work on trying to do that a little bit better in the future, maybe.
Very well said. I agree. Yes. Any other questions or comments?
This is John. I didn't know we had boots on the ground, but it's a great, it's a great thing that you're doing. So I think I'm impressed. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All of us. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll look forward to the next time. We do have a couple of items of business that we will move forward on. The first one is there are 6 academic degree programs on the agenda for expedited action. They're in the agenda book starting on page 15, and Ken did fill us in on those programs. Is there a motion to approve?
Chris Lamoth moves approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Trent Ingber, second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. There are also 2 capital projects on the agenda. We heard about those 2 for expedited action, and they're in the agenda book as well, page 27. One of them being, I'm sure, something that Judd is very proud of, happening in Muncie. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Can I ask who made the second?
Judd did.
Thank you, Judd. Good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. A lot of our good business is carried on in our committees, and it shows in the way we are able to move well in our meetings, knowing that these projects have been very carefully looked at. You can find information items on page 26 of the agenda book. Is there any old business? Any new business? I guess the new business is our next meeting is we're going to try to be together on May 13th, 2021. We will be in the Indianapolis in the commission's office in person. We hope. If there are any changes, we know the staff will let us know, but let's hope that we can do that. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Good being with you.
Thank you.
Bye all.